What's up? I've arrived, as somebody in the chat just asked. When will I arrive? I've arrived. There is a lot, as I say every week, there is a lot that I prepared for today's show. I'll take super chats again throughout and at the end of the video, or at the end of the stream. I don't know where to begin. I mean, I do know where I'm going to begin. But in terms of telling you what we're going to talk about today, I don't know where to begin. So Bernie stuff, as always. There's going to be some Bernie stories here. Actually, maybe just one or two this time. But so we got Bernie, we got Hillary Clinton, as you see in the headline. Some Bloomberg, or a Bloomberg story. A few stories from the UK, actually. So since the general election is coming up there on the 12th, I believe, it's good to focus now a little more on what's happening there. So some stuff on the UK election. Jake Tapper admitting something that CNN has not really admitted before on air. What else? Health insurance lobbyists doing their dirty work. Bernie firing back at Buttigieg. Wait for that one. And some random stuff as well. Some actually also a lot of funny videos today for some reason. Just so happens that a lot of funny videos came out this week. All right, before I do anything else, rationalnational.com/join. That gets you to the Patreon page. Become a member. Help support the show. You also get access to the Discord channel, which is like a chat thing. What else? You get early access videos, especially when if a video of mine gets demonetized before it goes live, I'll put those up for patrons first. But most importantly, you help the show continue because it's kind of hard to rely on YouTube ad revenue. So rationalnational.com/join. What else did I want to share before I start here? Oh yeah, I interviewed Cenk Uygur this week. Check that out. So it's actually the first time I've done a candidate interview. It's a good place to start with Cenk Uygur. But I'm going to be having on more, I think. So I am getting some emails. I haven't responded to these emails yet, but I've gotten some emails from people that want to talk to me about the run. And I'm a little more open now. So I feel a little more comfortable talking to candidates. Before I was wondering, how am I going to, square this circle in terms of being a reporter and also, having on people that I would support in the race. Ultimately, I'm just going to be a person that supports them. I'm not going to pretend I'm just, I am objective in my views, but I'm not going to pretend I don't want the person to win. So there you go. I mean, it's important to kind of elevate these people that are, especially in these races where they're primarying corporate Democrats, where, the entire machine's against them. There's nothing wrong with me just being out there and obvious with who I support. I got to get rid of that Streamlabs noise that you hear in the background, that Bernie quote. But I already see some super chats coming in. All right, let me start with, since I saw a super chat here. Yeah, YouTube's interface does not work, but if I go through the chat, I can see one or two. I just saw one, I think. D Big Fish sends me a $2 super chat. Thank you. Jack F sends $5 saying, "Oh boy, this is going to be a good video. Thanks for trying to make the USA better despite living elsewhere." No problem. Also understand, America is a superpower. So if you have someone like a Bernie Sanders, it will have an effect worldwide. It's not going to be just an effect within your borders. It will have a positive impact worldwide because of how much power the American government has globally. So that's a big part of why I'm very pro Bernie. All right, let's me start. Let's me start with this. Actually, what am I going to start with? Bernie and the Green New Deal. Okay. So this recent video has just emerged thanks to Twitter account Eric Blanc. He shared this old video of Bernie Sanders, and it's going to lead into a larger discussion here about the Green New Deal and how the Sunrise Movement has recently scored the top 3 candidates on their climate plans. So let me get to this. So this is from 1991. 1991, Bernie Sanders talking essentially about climate change, but not even just about climate change, but about how it needs to be addressed. Watch.
The truth of the matter is, I think, that unless we move radically and boldly, as you indicate, we may lose the planet for our grandchildren. Interestingly enough, I think, and I say this not because I want it to be that way, but I think it is that way, you're not going to deal effectively with the environmental crisis unless you deal with the economic crisis at the same time. They're the same issues. And a lot of people who are, environmental, boy, this factory is polluting, close it down. But what happens to the workers who are going out on the street? Not my concern. I'm concerned about the environment. This farmer is using a pesticide, close it down. But what happens to... What we have got to do is to understand the challenge, the real challenge, is how do you have a social system and an economy which does at least two things. Number one, it provides decently for its people at the same time as it does not destroy the environment. That's what you've got to do. That's why national health care is an environmental issue, because that takes an enormous burden off the backs of working people. So the argument is either we have, and how many cities in America are faced with this dilemma? Mayors, are faced with this dilemma. Here you have a factory which is polluting, it's poisoning its own workers, and the option is either you throw those workers out on the street or you save the environment. That is not a choice that we should have to make in 1991. The challenge that we face is, okay, how do you have a social system which provides educational opportunity, health care, etc., to its people, have an economic system which is producing what we need without destroying the environment. But the challenge here, and I think, and I applaud people like Jesse Jackson and others who are trying to do this, is to bring together the environmental movement and the workers' movement. Because if they're separated, if the choice is either jobs or the environment, that is no choice at all.
This is incredible. I mean, every time, when I think I've hit the bottom of the barrel when it comes to, seeing every single old Bernie video, I see a new one that surprises me again. Not only here is he talking about climate change in 1991, but he's talking about the need to combine it with the workers' movement. How this needs to be looked at as, not just an environmental issue, but a socioeconomic issue, bringing everything into it, healthcare into it, workers' rights into it. So he's applied this as well, this thinking to obviously his platform. So in addition to supporting Medicare for all, as he touches on healthcare in that video, his Green New Deal plan, this is the reason why it is the most comprehensive plan out of everybody, because he takes care of the workers. So if you're just, a worker, a blue collar worker, you're working for a fossil fuel company, you just, you go to your job, you have a job, you go to your job every day, you come home, that's your life. If you lose your job because of this transition away from fossil fuels, under Bernie Sanders' Green New Deal plan, you are given full pay for 5 years. In addition to taking care of your retirement, if you're on the edge of retirement, they worry about that. They take care of that. They also have job training, so you can work in a renewable energy field, potentially get training for that to transition off the fossil fuel industry. So they are taking a comprehensive approach. If you're just your average worker in a fossil fuel company, you will be taken care of. So he applies this thinking that, again, he had back in 1991 to his plan today. Imagine if politicians were all of them were like this in 1991. We wouldn't even be talking about climate change right now because it would already be dealt with. But he was like the lone voice talking about this back then. Just unbelievable. Now, let me go to, so the Sunrise Movement, sort of an offshoot of this, they had their scorecards here of each of the top three candidates' climate change plan. So you can see here, grading them, Bernie has an A-, which is amazing to me. I mean, it really shows you. People say, oh, Bernie, your plan is too far. He has an A-. It's not even like an A+. He has an A-, yet his plan is too far. So A-, but clearly the highest here with 91.5%. Warren gets a B- at 82.5%. Biden, F-, 37.5%. Parent-teacher conference time. I love it. Sunrise Movement is doing a lot of fantastic things, including this today, the climate strike. So as I tweet out here, it's Climate Strike Day. We're striking from school and work to sit in at the offices of establishment politicians nationwide, demanding they champion the Green New Deal and sign the Green New Deal pledge and show that we'll vote them out if they don't. Join us. Great work here. It's really incredible how far this the climate change conversation has been moved since just a year ago. I mean, I would say Greta Thunberg is a big piece of that. Here was just a student protesting to do something about climate change, and then a year and a half later, there's this massive movement. All these young people are engaged. Sunrise Movement gets involved. Other movements are involved. It's incredible. This is what is required to put pressure on politicians to actually get something done. And a lot of these students, hopefully, are of voting age or getting towards voting age, and will be able to, make their decision in the primary, and are more engaged in politics, and are at least able to vote this time if they weren't able to vote 4 years ago. So, if they come out to vote in big numbers, you're going to see a primary that is a lot different than the one that we saw in 2016. All right. That's a good story to start with. YouTube's interface does not tell me when super chats come in, even though it's supposed to. I see one here. Let me go to another. I have to go to this other page to see it, but it should be right in front of me. All right. Where was I? All right. D Big Fish, I did you. Jack F. I did that one. Brian B sends a super chat in saying Joe Biden has the power to turn his leg hairs blonde in the sun like a Super Saiyan. Trump should be very worried. Great, Brian. That's great. Sykes JB, or Sykes, whatever your name is. I think I've seen you before. Says, can't wait. Sends in $20. Very generous. Thank you. Yes, I'm glad you can't wait. We'll get to a lot more stories here. All right, what's next? Oh, let's do this one. I keep wondering if I should prep myself with a blank screen every time. Not a blank screen. I mean with my background like this every time, or if I just should not care and just start videos with the link already up. But there's like I don't know. I get very particular about things. If I have a certain way of doing something, which is having my back screen having this screen behind when I start, then I have a hard time changing that. But here's a story that is, you will see in a minute. Something I didn't know he said, Michael Bloomberg said back in 2013, but it is nuts. And then we're also going to fold in another piece here that I saw last week. All right. Back in 2013, Michael Bloomberg suggested that white people are targeted too much in stop and frisk, and minorities are not targeted enough. So, I'm aware of some of Michael Bloomberg's history, but this to me was really shocking. So here's the Mediaite story from 2013. Bloomberg unloads on stop and frisk opponents. Whites stopped too much and minorities too little. Appearing with host John Gambling on a New York City's WOR, Mayor Mike Bloomberg attacked opponents of the city's so-called stop and frisk program. It's society's job to make sure that no one group is disproportionately represented as potential perpetrators, Bloomberg said. I think we disproportionately stop whites too much and minorities too little. So you can see this wasn't taken out of context. These are his words. Now, this is completely backwards. So the reason he is saying this is because he's saying, well, or actually he goes on here. Most crimes in our city, serious crime, are committed by male minorities 15 to 25. Bloomberg told Gambling. When it comes to policing, the police have been able to go out and stop, look for those that fit the description of a witness or a victim after a crime. Oh my God. When you target certain groups of people more, then obviously you are going to get them for more crime. So when you have police go out and are a lot more comfortable going into minority communities and looking for people that are criminals, they're going to find more. If you largely avoid, wealthy white communities, then you're going to find less crime because you're avoiding going after them. So this idea that whites aren't targeted, are targeted too much is just completely ridiculous. And this guy's running for the Democratic nomination. Now, let me also show you just how much Michael Bloomberg hates poor people. So this is a video that was circulating last week that I want to share here. Essentially, Michael Bloomberg describes here how taxes on poor people is a great way to control them.
Say, well, taxes are regressive, but in this case, yes, they are. That's the good thing about them, because the problem is in people that don't have a lot of money. And so higher taxes should have a bigger impact on their behavior and how they deal with themselves. So I listen to people saying, oh, we don't want to tax the poor. Well, we want the poor to live longer so that they can get an education and enjoy life. And that's why you do want to do exactly what a lot of people say you don't want to do. The question is, do you want to pander to those people, or do you want to get them to live longer? And there's just no question. If you raise taxes on full sugary drinks, for example, they will drink less. And there's just no question that full sugar drinks are one of the major contributors to obesity, and obesity is one of the major contributors to heart disease and cancer and a variety of other things. So it's like saying, I don't want to stop using coal because coal miners will go out of work. Well, will lose their jobs. We have a lot of soldiers in the United States, in the U.S. Army, but we don't want to go start a war just to give them something to do. And that's exactly what you're saying when you say, well, let's keep coal killing people because we don't want coal miners to lose their jobs. The truth of the matter is there aren't very many coal miners left anyways, and we can find other things for them to do. But the comparison is a life or a job, or taxes or life. Which do you want to do? Take your poison.
So it's regressive, it is good.
Okay. This conversation is just completely backwards. Poor people are taxed too much. Honestly, I don't think income tax is a good thing for most people. A wealth tax, estate tax, that's corporate tax. That's where the focus needs to be. There is no reason for someone like Michael Bloomberg to exist. There is no reason for someone with that amount of wealth to exist at all. Yet here he is turning around saying, oh no, poor people aren't taxed enough. We should tax them more because it controls their behavior. How about the behavior of people like Michael Bloomberg, who is currently trying to buy an election for himself? That's okay? It's just amazing that this guy, first of all, thinks he has any chance, but also is running in the Democratic primary. What he's really doing here is trying to set himself up for a third-party run. Now, what's hilarious to me is I don't think that would even hurt Bernie Sanders. So, the scenario is Bloomberg would only move for a third-party run if it's like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders as the nominee. Most likely Bernie Sanders, because I feel like if Elizabeth Warren were the nominee, he may be, I don't know, he may be a little less inclined to get involved because she's a little easier to get to, let's just say, in terms of her juggling all different interests. But Bernie is 100% committed to the working class movement. So Michael Bloomberg thinks he can get in as a third-party run if it's Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump and be able to what? Win the election? Even if his intention here is to simply spoil it for Bernie Sanders because he'd be happier with Donald Trump 100%, Bloomberg would rather Donald Trump over Bernie Sanders because Donald Trump will protect his wealth. Even if that's the case, I don't think Bloomberg's going to hurt Bernie Sanders more than Donald Trump. In fact, Bloomberg's only real constituency is wealthy people in either party. So Bloomberg may peel off, in fact, more Republicans for a third-party run. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders is bringing out a lot of non-voters, a lot of independents that didn't vote in 2016 because they were disillusioned or didn't like either candidate in the race. So Go right ahead, Bloomberg. Run. Like, let's see where this goes. I'm not worried at all about this guy. I'm just amazed at the amount of confidence somebody that is so inadequate has. All right. I really don't want to talk about Bloomberg too much. Like, it's just, guys, just attention seeker. So by me covering him, I'm giving him attention, which is exactly what he wants. Citizen Zero asks a super chat saying, if you were Bernie, how would you attack Pete on stage? We're going to get into a little bit of that because I have a story where Bernie is actually going after Pete Buttigieg a little bit. I mean, he's asked a question about Buttigieg, so we answer the question. But you go after his record. I mean, I don't know where to start with Buttigieg because you can go after his record in South Bend. You can go after his platform. You can go after his lies in him trying to sell his platform. There are so many ways you can go after Pete Buttigieg. I guess he could maybe start with healthcare, since healthcare is sort of the biggest issue for a lot of Americans. So you go after how empty Pete Buttigieg's plan is for healthcare, how it's just a public option with a fancy name. I mean, Buttigieg's plan is Medicare for all who want it. It's not Medicare for all. It's a public option, and a public option would not work the same as Medicare for all would. So it's just a complete ruse to try to get people. A public option would offset all of the sick people, all of the older people, onto the public plan. Meanwhile, private companies get to enjoy jacking up costs, having all the sick people. I mean, in putting like the whole point of insurance is that there is a pool of people. So some people are sicker than others. Some are older, some are younger. You have this giant pool of people, and the bigger the pool, the better it is, because you are offsetting the cost for people that actually need it. So under a single payer system, everybody's on the same plan, which also means you can go to any doctor, go to any clinic, everybody's on the same plan. It also means your Congress people, the wealthiest people in the country, also have the same healthcare plan. Again, making it harder to attack, making it harder to drain of resources, since everybody is using the same healthcare plan. That's a single payer plan. Everybody on the same plan. A public option, you have to first, I guess, buy into it. So there's still out-of-pocket expenses. And if you're on the public plan and you have still private insurance existing, the private insurance companies are able to try and drain the public system of resources by, again, offsetting all the sick people onto the public plan. Meanwhile, they get all the healthy people. So what ends up happening is you end up destroying the public plan, and then private insurance can say, look, I told you the public plan wouldn't work. No, now everyone should go back onto the private plans because we just destroyed the public plan. So this is why you can't have that transition. You can't have a transition like Elizabeth Warren's talking about with like a 3-year transition. Oh, let's have a public option first. Then 3 years later, when I'm running for re-election, we're going to pass Medicare for all. Really? That's how politics works. I mean, she's either delusional or lying. It's one of the two. So if you go with the Elizabeth Warren plan and you give these private insurance companies 3 years, the 3-year head start to try and drain a public system of resources, then it's not going to be a good case for Medicare for all 3 years later. So it's completely ridiculous. All you have to do is look outside your own borders. I'm in Canada. Single payer plan. No complaints. My only complaint is it doesn't go far enough. We don't have dental care. Dental care should be covered. In Medicare for all, it is covered. So in terms of like my experience with healthcare, I never think about healthcare until I need it. If I have to go to the doctor because I wake up sick, I can make a same-day appointment, go to my doctor. Even if she's not available, go to any walk-in clinic. Again, single payer system. We're all on the same plan. Go to any walk-in clinic, see any doctor, get a prescription. Usually my prescriptions have always been really cheap. But if you have, again, we also don't have universal pharmacare here. So if you have like a serious illness, it can get expensive. Pharmacare can, but it's nowhere near the cost that Americans pay. So anytime for me, I've got a prescription, it's like $20, $10. Like, I'm not even joking. That's it for like a month of pills. And that's it. I go home, like no paperwork, no dealing with insurance companies, nothing. It's just easy peasy. Don't think about it at all. So how did I get here? So Bernie Sanders, I think, could focus on Pete Buttigieg's healthcare, his garbage healthcare plan as a way to really help him lose support. Though Again, a lot of his support right now is being manufactured by the press because they want him to grow. That's how the mainstream the mainstream media works. They focus on a candidate and act like, oh, this candidate is surging. Meanwhile, yeah, he has some support in Iowa and New Hampshire because he's pouring a ton of money into those states and ads, but it has yet to translate nationally. He's still sitting at like 7, 8, 9% nationally. So he really doesn't have all the support, but the mainstream press, they manufacture that support and they grow that support by acting like, oh, he's surging. So you need Bernie Sanders or anybody, really, moderators would be nice to go after Pete Buttigieg on his healthcare plan, because you also saw when Kamala Harris got off her Medicare for All. So she began the race on Medicare for All. She was a co-sponsor of Bernie's bill. She supports Medicare for All, and her support grew after that first debate where she went after Biden, and she still at that time supported Medicare for All. Her support was at its highest. Then, when she's questioned on Medicare for All, she backtracks. She begins to lose support. She gets down to like half her support that she had at the beginning of July. By the end of July, then you have the debate where Tulsi Gabbard goes after Kamala Harris on stage. Again, I don't think that was a major reason why Kamala Harris lost support. Again, she was already on the way down, but it didn't help. So any progressives that maybe watched that debate that were maybe thinking, oh, Kamala Harris is okay, Tulsi Gabbard completely exposed her. So she continued to go down and lost support and was out. And while that was happening, Elizabeth Warren was rising because Elizabeth Warren was now saying, I'm with Bernie on Medicare for All. So her support was growing. Once she reneged on that and had this two-stage plan of, public option first, and 3 years later somehow pass Medicare for All, her support's dropping off. So healthcare appears to be a big issue for a lot of voters. You focus on Pete Buttigieg's healthcare plan, I think that's the way to go after him. Thank you for the question. All right, next story. Oh my, we're only 30 minutes. We're 30 minutes into my stream, and I have like a lot here. I may not hit every story because there's probably too much. All right, what's next? A lot of these I think are kind of like show and tell, which I like to do. Just like, watch this video. Yes, these are show and tell. Two hilarious Labor Party, or I should say, one's a Labor Party ad. The other one is pro-Labor, but it's not a Labor Party. Oh, that was a little spoiler. All right. I just ate pizza half an hour ago. Not a good idea to eat pizza before a stream. Okay. There are two hilarious ads out in support of the Labour Party. So there's a general election coming up in the UK on December 12th. I want to show you these two ads. And it also, this kind of gives you an idea of how, maybe the Democratic Party or like a campaign like Bernie Sanders could maybe use comedy to deliver their message as well. So let me show you this first one. This, I believe, is from the Labour Party because Jeremy Corbyn tweeted it out. And you're going to notice the billionaire in this video looks an awful lot like a certain billionaire in the UK, Richard Branson. Check this out.
Hello there. There's been a lot of talk recently about taking Britain's railways back into public ownership. I'm here to tell you why that's a bad idea and why a private system is the right way to go. Not many people know this, but the UK taxpayers pay 6 times more in public subsidies than they did before privatisation. In just over a 5-year period, Virgin's West Coast Main Line received 2.7 billion in subsidies and yet kept 500 million in profits. Wonderful, isn't it? Government invests taxpayers' money on rail infrastructure, like trains, tracks, tunnels and bridges, all that necessary stuff. We, however, get to run the things that make money, like train tickets and food. So the taxpayer pays, the passenger pays, and we collect.
Your crown, sir.
Lovely. Because of the fragmented rail system, we can make the buying of tickets far more complicated and therefore expensive. A study of cross-country tickets found that passengers could have saved £85 if they bought single tickets along the same route. And all those little extras mean more money in the bank. In 2011, Great Western Railway still had 3 years left on their lease and owed over 800 million to the government. They decided rather than pay the money that was owed, they would walk out on their contract. The Tory government was so keen to let them carry on, they reduced this debt to just 32 million.
Excellent swing, sir.
How amazing is that? Train companies can make a ton of money, yet we aren't doing anything that the public can't do themselves. After yet another company walked out of its contract, East Coast Main Line was put back into public control. It was a huge success, but thankfully the Tory government put it back into private hands. Now that was a close one.
Chew your food for you, sir.
As you can see, privatisation has been great for anyone who runs a rail company or has shares in a rail company. And with the Tory government wanting to privatise even more things, like the NHS, this gravy train will run forever.
Ready, sir?
That was great.
Hello there.
That was great. Comedy is so effective. When I first launched this channel, I was don't go back and watch those videos. There were some videos I was trying to be more funny, like more comedic. That was kind of my approach, kind of like Jon Stewart-esque inspired. Eventually, it's just too much work. I mean, especially when you get to scripting, because a lot of comedy kind of has to be scripted for it to work properly, especially if it's satirical in a way. So I stopped doing that, but like comedy is incredibly effective when it comes to delivering a political message, because politics is often dry, it can be hard to understand, but if you have it wrapped up in something funny, then you can show it to a family member who isn't normally into politics, but they'll grasp the concepts through a video like this. So look, if you're in the UK, share this video with friends and family who aren't maybe all that engaged in politics or what's happening. Show them this, and I think they'll be able to understand maybe a little better what's going on here with the privatization of public services. Let me also share this one. So this is from Momentum. So Momentum says here, exclusive leaked behind the scenes video of Boris Johnson at Conservative HQ. This one I like maybe even a little more. It's pretty good. Watch.
So, what have we got for my big speech tomorrow? Well, first up, big announcement about how we're going to hire another 20,000 police officers. Great.
Another 20,000 police officers to almost make up for the 21,000 that we cut. Smart.
Yeah, maybe just stick with the first part. Yeah. Next up, people are really unhappy about fracking. Apparently it's bad for the environment and causes earthquakes. So, I reckon we're going to pause all fracking.
For how long?
Well, until after the election. Brilliant.
Couldn't we just ban fracking completely? No.
Yeah, so anyway, if anyone asks about Russian interference in the elections...
I've got a good one for this one. So just to show that we're serious, we should announce that the Conservative Party is going to stop taking money from all Russians connected to Putin, and will freeze all bank accounts connected to the Russian criminals, and, this is the best one, you know, we will immediately release a report on Russian interference in British politics.
Is she new?
Yeah. Anyway, final point. We're going to attack Labour's spending plans and say that it'll increase taxes by £2,500 per UK family on average.
Fantastic.
But that's not really true, is it? Under Labour's plans, 95% of people won't get tax rises at all. They're just going to tax the wealthiest.
Yeah. But on average, it means that everyone pays more.
Yeah, but that's like saying if I go to the pub with my mate and she drinks 20 pints and I have none, on average we've both had 10 pints. Sounds like I got wasted, but I didn't.
I think maybe you should just stop talking.
I'm just worried that if we keep making stuff up, that then, the media will just call us out on it.
That's so well done. I love that video. If you're in the UK, share that one around. It's from Momentum, People's Momentum on Twitter. You'll find. I'm sure you know Momentum if you're in the UK and watch me. So share this one around with your friends and family. Just amazing. Love it. I think I got a super chat from someone in the UK. Let me just read that one. Indeed. I got £10 from Savlinif. I'm so bad with names. Savilinify. Says UK citizen here, loving your coverage of the election. We desperately need a Labour government. Jeremy Corbyn for Prime Minister. I'm with you, buddy. I really hope it happens. It appears a lot more people in the UK right now are engaged. There's a lot more registered voters this time around than in the last election. So considering only one party really was pushing for people to get registered to vote, which is the Labour Party, let's hope a lot of those, I think it's like 4 million or something people that are registered, or 4 million more, I think, something like that this time than last time. So hopefully a lot of them are supporting Labour. Okay, I think I'm going to get to some other super chats I missed. Melanie Dietrich says, do you think it helps Bernie when Hillary Clinton attacks him? It may be, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it hurts or helps, to be honest with you. I don't know how much of an impact Hillary Clinton really has. I don't know how many supporters that support Bernie right now care about what Hillary Clinton says. So, I don't know. But we will get to that story where Hillary invented an alternate reality where Bernie didn't help her. Cheryl Tyler says, or sends a super chat in with $20, says nothing. Thank you, Cheryl. Very generous. Zach Finley says, love your perspective, David. Thanks for being you. Thank you, Zach. Very kind. Jaguar Rose says, I wish Bernie would spend more time explaining why single payer is better than private insurance, because we're losing the messaging battle on that. He can't just focus on the uninsured because too many people have private insurance they like. But yeah, no, I agree with you completely. I just find it hilarious that people like their insurance company. I have car insurance. I don't like my car insurance company. Who likes their private insurance company? It's just a weird thing to like. What they like is their doctor. They like their providers. You explain under Medicare for All system, since everybody's on the same plan, maybe this is to your point, that he could explain the single payer system a little better, that because everybody's on the same plan, you don't lose your doctor. You don't lose your provider. Like, you stay with the same everything that you like. And maybe if you don't like it, you go somewhere else. But yeah, I agree with you that he should. There is a simpler and quicker way to explain the single payer system and why it operates the way it operates. Because I think a lot of people, even if they hear, Bernie says you're going to keep your doctor, they think, well, Obama said that. So that may not work just saying that. You have to actually explain why you actually do, no matter what, do keep your doctor this time, because everybody will be on the same plan. No, I mean, unless your doctor just, like, I'm not even sure how your doctor wouldn't be on a single payer plan. They would have to be. They can't work outside of it. It would be illegal to duplicate coverage outside of the public system. So yeah, they'd have to be on the single payer plan. All right, next story. This one's a little depressing. That's what you're going to see. So the Trump administration is cutting food stamps for 700,000 people. And a lot of those people are going to be part of Donald Trump's base. So they're making a move here that actually hurts their base the most, as we're going to get to. First, let me show you this here. So this is the story. Breaking. Trump admin has formalized work requirements for recipients of food stamps, a move that will cause nearly 700,000 people to lose access to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So let me go, I made some notes here on the details here. So basically, this affects people between the ages of 18 to 49 who are childless and not disabled. And quoting from the report here, the USDA rule change affects people between the ages of 18 to 49 who are childless and not disabled. Under current rules, this group is required to work at least 20 hours a week for more than 3 months over a 36-month period to qualify for food stamps. But states have been able to create waivers for areas that face high unemployment. The new rule would limit states from waiving those standards, instead restricting their use to those areas that have a 6% unemployment rate or higher. The national unemployment rate in October was 3.6%. So this essentially impacts 700,000 people. And just an example of how horrible these sorts of requirements are. So Daniel J. Willis tweets out here. He's a data journalist for RIFF Online. Oh wait, that's music journalist. He's also a data he's a data journalist for EdSource. So he tweets out here, I didn't know this, but it's in there and it's insane. You're required to work to get food stamps, but are ineligible if you have a car worth more than $2,250 that you use to commute to work, which is necessary to work if you don't live on a bus route. So if you have a car worth more than $2,000 and you use it to go to work, you can't apply for these food stamps. Like, how is it supposed to help people? It obviously isn't. This is just going after the poorest people, the people in the worst situation possible, draining them of even more resources, even more money, even more help to, again, give to the very rich. And this impacts Trump's base the most. As Paul DeCristo Cristofo tweets out here, most SNAP benefits go to red states. MAGA equals always voting against their best interest because they're so easily triggered by propaganda. Yeah, like, I feel bad for, like, luckily I don't personally know anybody that supports Donald Trump. I'm not American, so I kind of have a disconnect there. But people in your lives, I'm sure watching this, you know people that support Trump, and they're not in great situations. Maybe they're poor, they have low wages, and they still support Donald Trump. Show them something like this. I mean, I know it's really hard to get, actual facts into the brains of many of these people, but maybe, just maybe, one day they'll absorb something like this. Because you show them this, how food stamps affect Trump's base the most, and he's cutting them. Like, how can you possibly justify this move? So New Mexico, 22% of the population receiving SNAP benefits. Mississippi, 21%. West Virginia, 20%. Oregon, 19%. Louisiana, 19%. Alabama, 18%. Tennessee, 18%. Florida, 18%. Georgia, 17%. Kentucky, 17%. Rhode Island, 16%. North Carolina, 16%. South Carolina, 16%. Illinois, 16%. Oklahoma, 16%. Delaware, 16%. And it goes on. Michigan, 16%. Arkansas, 15%. Yeah. I just don't know how you justify this. And this is also why, I don't know. Like, people try and make the comparison, and I get it. Republicans and Democrats are largely the same in many ways, and I argue this on my channel a lot. But in cases like this, there actually is a difference. Something like this, a Democratic president would not be doing right now. This is Trump level cruel. This is cruelty to an extra level that a Democratic administration wouldn't push to. So even with the shittiest of Democrats, something like this would not happen. That said, obviously, a a lot of terrible things still do happen under Democratic presidents or a Democratic Congress. So it's not necessarily saying that Democrats are. No, I'm not saying vote blue no matter who, but I'm saying understand there is a difference here between the parties when it comes to the margins. All right.
When you have rational national priorities.
Let me get some super chats. Jordan Darrett sends $10 in saying, do you think the left has too many gatekeepers? Some people seem to think if you're not part of the echo chamber, then you're a fake lefty, but I feel different ideas and voices are needed. I guess I'd ask you who the gatekeepers are, because I don't think there's gatekeepers. I mean, you can go on YouTube and start a channel like that. In terms of gatekeepers, I have to know like an example of what you mean by that to really answer the question. But I don't think there's too many gatekeepers. I mean, if anything, the left has like, it's a very wide base. There are many of us, all different, very diverse in terms of race, experience, income, wealth. I mean, go down the list where we live. So it's very diverse in terms of that. If anything, I mean, the right has the gatekeepers. We're talking about the GOP, which is essentially a white identity party. That's what the party is right now. So I think that's where the gates are. But I just think there's a lot of people on the left that are, we care about these issues, and we care about certain things more than others based on our own experiences, based on, whatever it is. So there's going to be a more diversity of thought, I think, on the left, because there are so many issues to talk about, to care about, to discuss. A lot of the right wing, at least in terms of right wing media, a lot of their focus tends to be on cultural issues because they can't sell people on cutting taxes for the rich. So they distract you with the cultural issues, try to get you in that way, and just completely ignore the fact that they're robbing you the entire time. So yeah, I don't necessarily agree with what you're saying. I do think there's a lot of diversity of thought in that. We should welcome that. Balthazar says, are you ready for HRC to tag in for Biden and all her cronies return for 2016 round 2? They seem ready to hash out 2016 all over again. Go right ahead. I'm not worried. The movement is behind Bernie. The young people are behind Bernie, and they're more engaged than ever. In 2016, young people, while they were still with Bernie, they weren't as engaged as they are now. At least that's what I am feeling from what we're seeing in terms of like the climate movement or whatever it is. We're seeing a lot more young voters engaged, so I'm not too worried about Biden or Hillary Clinton. Balthazar also says, how can we convince others on the left that Bernie's plan should be the bare minimum? Jayapal's is even better, but every other plan is inadequate. Yeah. See, here's the thing. I don't know if I would really consider you to be the left if you don't support Bernie Sanders. Like, I'm just being honest. Because that just means you're not all that engaged in the issues. Or you care about, I don't know, having the first female president over the fact that Bernie's actually going to fight for people. So, yeah, I don't know how we convince people of that when it should be obvious already that his plan is the bare minimum. David Hart sends a $10 super chat in saying, only in the U.S. can a lunatic president, this is a quote from something I imagine, there's a quote here. Only in the U.S. can a lunatic president escalating global mass murder by robots, airplane, and waging. By the way, I'm saying that word weird because I saw a Bernie video where he said robot oddly, and it kind of screwed me up. Actually, I may show that video later. But anyways, back to the super chat. Only in the U.S. can a lunatic president escalate global mass murder by robot airplane and waging more wars than he can count while threatening to nuke at least 2 countries. Yeah. I think, yeah, totally. I agree with you. It's just that Donald Trump, people don't take him seriously. So he can do all those things, like, you know, threatening to nuke, whatever. I don't think people think he's going to do it because he's just a total idiot. So I guess that's kind of where he gets off a little easier because of that, because he's not taken seriously. Sarah Chicago says, yes, more politic me, Moose Daddy. What? Yes, politic me. Yes, politic me, Moose Daddy. Oh, I'm a Moose Daddy because I'm Canadian. Okay, I get it. That's funny. Thank you, Sarah. All right, I got to get back to stories here. I will do more super chats. Don't worry. I will not forget where I left off because of that super chat. I'll be able to easily find Moose Daddy and go on from there. Okay, where are we at now? This story. Okay. I'm just absorbing what I wrote here because I didn't finish prepping this story, but I may still do it. I'll still do it. So this is another UK story. This is the second one today. Man, I should not eat pizza before shooting. Jesus. So there's been a lot of talk about the potential privatization of the NHS. Recently, Jeremy Corbyn came out and revealed that the Tories do plan to put drug pricing on the table, opened up to the American market to potentially raise drug prices for people in the UK. And now, this week, Tory Minister Dominic Raab admitted that, yes, the US will be free to raise the price of drugs. But he makes an absurd claim in the defense of it, saying that this doesn't really matter because you're going to see. So watch I saw this and really I could not stop laughing and crying at the same time because of how absurd what he said is. You'll see.
The NHS is not up for grabs in any trade deal. We would walk away from a trade deal that suggested that was the case. But you're right, reducing barriers to trade on both sides is a win-win. It increases business activity. It's good for businesses and creating the jobs of the future. But it also gives the consumer a better deal because they've got cheaper prices and greater choice.
Just to take drugs, as I understand it, we can't guarantee when we leave the European Union that we will pay the same amount for American drugs in future, that they might decide to jack up the price. Is that right?
Well, look, the Americans will take their decisions, but what we're saying
Which could be to jack up the price.
Well, no, I think it's hugely unlikely. Why would they do that? What's the interest?
Well, get more money, that's why.
Well, no, not if you reduce the amount, the volume of purchases.
Okay. Do you catch what he said there? If you increase prices on drugs, it's not going to affect anything because it'll affect the volume of purchase. People will buy less medicine if the prices go up. Is that how life-saving medicine works? People buy less medicine that they need because the prices go up? No, they go bankrupt. You could look at any number of stories on this. Let me just show you the CNBC story. Medication costs fuel painful medical debt. Bankruptcies. It shouldn't take me or anybody to point this out, that people are going to buy medicine they need regardless because it's their life. So this idea that opening up the NHS to the American market, to American drug companies and their pricing is perfectly fine, because why would they increase the prices? Have you looked at the cost of medicine in the US? It's like 10 to 1 compared to the UK and Canada. The fact that he made this and thinks this is a good way, a good defense, is completely absurd. Again, if you're in the UK, wake the hell up. You cannot allow this party to win. You have to vote for a party that can actually form government. The only other party that can form government right now is Labour. You have to support Labour to avoid this crap. Now, I also want to share this. Boris Johnson. This is in 2002. He, as you're seeing here,
There are now more.
called for the breakup of the monolithic, monopolistic NHS. And we're going to get to, this is only one of many examples of Boris Johnson calling for the breakup of the NHS. Let's just watch this
More
here.
people than ever before who are being forced to use their own resources to pay for operations, and that isn't because Labour has been particularly, the Labour government has been particularly kind to private medicine. On the contrary, when the government came to power, they took away the tax break for private healthcare for the elderly, with the result that 200,000 people immediately gave up their policies. People are being driven to use private medicine in despair at the NHS. And there should be no shame in pointing that out. I don't see why it should be sacrilegious to say that the NHS is failing. I think it's all very well to treat the NHS as a religion, but it's legitimate for some of us to point out that insofar as it is a religion, it is letting down its adherents very, very badly. And I think it is quite wrong of the Chancellor to set his face against the experience of other countries who have a far better record of healthcare provision and far better life expectancy, far better record of dealing with cancer, coronary heart disease, and it's because, not just because they spend more money on health, but because they do not rely exclusively on a top-down, monopolistic healthcare service of a kind we have in this country. The Chancellor has decided that there is only one model for healthcare in this country. It's the NHS model, and he's decided that it's unimprovable, except for the addition of more taxpayers' money and platoons of auditors to swell the ranks of the administrators. All the froth and the candy floss and all the spin of New Labour has finally been blown away, and we have people like the Honourable Member for Hempstead revealed in their true colours as taxers and spenders and believers in the NHS, unreformed as it is, monolithic, monopolistic. There are now.
All right. So there you see Boris Johnson talk about how, I mean, countries that have a private option, that have these private companies, they do a lot better with healthcare. People really love when private industry, when private companies get to profit off of sick people. They love it, which is why recently there was this video went out, one of my favorite videos of all time. British people reacting to how crazy the cost of American healthcare is. So this potentially is in your future in the UK if you don't back a government that can actually, or back a party that can actually form government after December 12th. Watch this.
10 grand for a baby.
Is there a price for that?
Yes.
Jeez, $100, $200?
$2.5 grand. Ambulance call out. How much do you think that costs?
Zero payment.
Zero payment?
Yeah, zero payment.
No. Because $2,500.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
you look. An inhaler.
$100.
Yeah, you're pretty close. It's a bit more.
120.
250 to 350.
For an inhaler?
Yes.
Man, so if you're poor, you're dead.
I know that it's like public healthcare in the UK. In the US, fortunately, I'm able to get healthcare through my parents, their jobs, but like I carry an EpiPen, and I know that like the cost of that has just been rising. So like there's like very few companies that even compete, so it's sort of like a monopoly for the EpiPen. Even though like we have insurance, it cost my parents about a couple hundred, even with insurance.
So 2 EpiPens. Okay. How much do you reckon they are?
$80.
600.
$40.
I'm afraid not.
More?
More?
$100.
More.
150.
More.
250.
More.
Shut the fridge.
More.
£300. $600. Yeah. What? Why?
That's a very good question.
$600.
Yeah.
For me, it's more like just hives and shortness of breath.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be like an immediate death situation, but like, so I've been fortunate I've not had to use it, but it's something like keep on me. Like I have my backpack right now, I have it on me.
Cost of childbirth.
Jesus. 50 grand, something ridiculous now.
Yeah, see, I've blown the figures up in your head now, haven't I? Because they're larger. It's the highest, generally speaking, is about 30 grand.
Okay.
Is that reasonable? You haven't?
Not reasonable at all. It's just like now we're on like we're on a benchmark.
100, 200.
Dollars.
Yeah.
The average is about 10 grand. It can go up to 30,000.
10 grand.
All right, I'm not gonna watch. It's 4 minutes long, but you get the point. This is crazy. Waleed Shahid tweeted this out, but this is initially from, let me see if it's in here, from Joe. So joe.co.uk. They put this out. Just, I mean, it really shows you, why am I so small? There we go. It really shows you how crazy the American system is. I mean, those reactions are correct. Healthcare that you need to live. The fact that it puts people into bankruptcy. That people are, cutting pills in half. All of this, understand, is crazy. It's crazy to anybody outside of the U.S. It's crazy to anybody that's living under a national healthcare system or under a single payer system. This is crazy. So I think that video is one of the best ways to sell your friends and family on how insane the American healthcare system is, because it gives you perspective. A lot of Americans don't have perspective because you have your own lives, right? You go to work, take care of your kids, whatever it is. You don't really get to engage on these issues. So when you get to see the reaction of people that are outside your borders, reacting to how your situation is, how your healthcare system operates, it really gives you perspective on how ridiculous the American system is. One last thing on this story that I almost forgot, just to give you a little idea here onto what Boris thinks. Boris Johnson. So the clip I showed you earlier isn't the only time that Boris Johnson called for the breakup of NHS. It's happened many times. So 10 more times Boris Johnson backed NHS privatization. So I'm not going to read all this, but a bunch of quotes here. 2002, 2001, 2001, 2001, 2002, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2002. Over and over and over and over again, until I assume it became politically unfeasible for him to do it. But if he's in a position of power, where he has the power to really make a shift here and potentially open up the NHS to American drug pricing, he will do it. So you're warned. All right. I still haven't done the Hillary story yet. Okay, let me get to some super chats. I think I have an allergy to something. Sometimes I eat food and my nose gets itchy. And it's usually when I eat food out. Like, I think something in the oil. Does anybody have that problem? Maybe you can help me here. I guess I go to the doctor and ask. But it's really odd. Like, it's a hard thing to pinpoint what gives me that reaction. But clearly the pizza did. So maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe it's dough or dairy. Yeah, super chats. All right. So I ended on Moose Daddy. Never heard that one before. David Hart sends a $10 super chat. Thank you, David. Again, that's $20 from you now, I believe. Says, get himself impeached for failing to ship weapons to Ukrainians to help start World War III. David Swan. Oh, you were ending the quote. So somebody sent a super chat in between you sending a quote. So this is your full quote. I'll start from the first one. Only in the U.S. can a lunatic president escalating global mass murder by robot airplane and waging more wars than he can count while threatening to nuke at least 2 countries get himself impeached for failing to ship weapons to Ukrainians to help start World War III. David Swanson. Okay. Thank you for sharing that quote. Sam Foe sends a super chat in saying Trump will blame immigrants for abusing SNAP and that's how he will sell it to his mega base for why they are cutting benefits. I mean, he can try that, but it's going to also hurt his base. Regardless, look, I really don't think. The only way Trump wins is if the Democratic base is really suppressed, and it was suppressed in 2016. It's got to be suppressed even more. And Joe Biden potentially could lead to that. So could Pete Buttigieg. So that's why you got to support a candidate with an actual base behind them. Like, we're not going to change the minds of most MAGA at this point. They're just too far gone. But yeah, Trump will sell anything to his base, I guess. That's kind of the point here. Anna Bird retired says the problem is that they are told the cuts will hurt black and brown people more than them, so they are okay with it. Sounds insane, but it's 100% true. Also talking about the food stamps. Yep, that's correct. Moonborn Unicorn, that's great, says, stupid question, does Canada have food stamps? I think so. I never had to rely on food stamps, but I can't imagine we don't. We have a welfare system. So yeah, we have food stamps. Guris Sankar Mishra sends me a microphone. Thank you for the sticker. Ralph VL says, keep up the awesome service. Thank you, Ralph. Moonborn Unicorn says, I would have lost my snap if I did lose my car. Yeah. I mean, I can't even... Yeah. People that are in situations like that, to try and drain them more, it just shows you, like, it's just a total disconnect from humanity. Like, an obvious lack of compassion, but just total disconnect that people are born into situations where they're already poor. I mean, if you're born into the wrong zip code, that can mean everything. So to, stamp down on people even more so by cutting their food stamps is just unbelievable to me. Chris in Dallas, which is also why I can't cover a lot of those stories, because it's so disgusting. Like, on the face of it, it's wrong. We all know Trump's corrupt. If you don't know by now, if you don't know this administration is completely against you, or just completely for, the wealthiest and massive corporations, and completely against everybody else. If you don't already know this, I can't change your mind. I got nothing to tell you. Chris in Dallas says, Hillary is pant-suited syphilis. She won't go away. Pant-suited syphilis. I still got to get to the Hillary story. Okay, let me stop there. Because I got to get to more stories. So I stopped at pant-suited syphilis. I should be able to remember that. All right. Let me do this story first. Jake Tapper, CNN, Mehdi Hassan, and then I'll get to the Hillary story. If I can stop scratching my nose from whatever food triggered me. Okay. Oh, that's a different. There you go. All right. Sorry for the silence. Just had to prep this. So recently on CNN, host Jake Tapper admitted to something that I have never heard a cable news host admit to before, that they essentially actively suppress progressive voices. Now, he said it casually, kind of offhand, but it was clear that he is aware of it, which makes it even worse. So watch this, and also I'll get into the comments made here from Mehdi Hassan, or I think it's Mehdi Hassan. I'm hearing two different pronunciations now. because he comments on Bernie Sanders in the race.
We often have Democrats on the panel, but not necessarily progressives, people in the Warren Sanders camp of things. So let me ask you.
So let me just stop there. I like how he just mentions that like no big deal. Oh yeah, well, we have Democrats on here, but not normally, progressives, which are, the entire base. Like if you look at any poll, just one example, polling on Medicare for all, for Democrats, the support is 80 to 90% plus. Democrats support Medicare for all. So we're talking right now really just Bernie Sanders, because even Elizabeth Warren has clawed back her plan. So just Bernie Sanders. They don't have people representing this view. Of 80%, to lowball it here, of 80% of Democrats, they don't have someone on regularly to represent that view. And Jake Tapper's he just admits it. It's no big deal. Again, it shows you that it's hard to know if it's even, if he clearly doesn't understand the implications of what he just said. He doesn't understand that that's a huge deal, that all the time they have on crazy Trump supporting Republicans. They have on moderate Republicans. They have on moderate Democrats, corporate Democrats, but they don't have on progressives. I mean, how do you not understand that is a huge deal? Now, let me go on here because Mehdi Hassan goes on to talk about what most of mainstream press right now is missing in this race.
More in the Warren Sanders camp of things. So let me ask you, where do you see those candidacies right now? Because it looks like Elizabeth Warren has slid a little bit in the polls.
She has slid a bit, but I'm not sure how long that slide will continue. I think Bernie Sanders is the story that's not talked about enough. Nevada, New Hampshire, he's led in New Hampshire, the recent, I can't remember so many polls, Quinnipiac, he's leading in New Hampshire. Iowa, he's in the top 3. I mean, I saw Axios story saying that a different candidate could win each of the first 4 states. Right, yeah. You know what? Bernie could also win 3 of the first 4 states. It could happen. There's no reason not to. And I think that's what's interesting. We in the media are very obsessed with the athlete Pete Buttigieg, who was very impressive earlier this year, less so now, I think. And obviously Joe Biden being the front runner for a long time. But it would be madness to write off Warren and Sanders, especially if at some stage you would assume one of them gets out of the race at some stage. So, and then, does the other person pick up all those votes?
No one said is Mayor Bloomberg, right? No one said Michael.
Oh, my God. Mehdi Hassan here makes a great point, sandwiched between 2 ridiculous things. On one hand, Jake Tapper admitting, yeah, we don't have on progressives ever, even though it's the majority of the base, even though it may in fact be the majority of the entire voting nation. This idiot at the end, I forget his name, but this guy's always on supporting Donald Trump. Bloomberg, not talking about Michael Bloomberg. Maybe it's because he has no support. Maybe it's because only the wealthiest people in the country support Michael Bloomberg, or people that are tricked into supporting Bloomberg for whatever reason. But Mehdi Hassan makes a great point here. Bernie Sanders, of course, being largely ignored. I mean, how many examples are there of this Bernie blackout? PBS, I did a story on this. They did an 8-minute segment. PBS did an 8-minute segment on the race. At no point did they mention Bernie Sanders. 8 minutes. And Bernie's been in the top 3 in polling the entire race. He has the most donors, the most individual donors by far, the most donations by far, the most money out of anybody in the race. That used to be a huge thing too. The media always covered the money race. Why are they barely covering the money race now? It's because Bernie Sanders has smashed what the money race used to be about. It used to be about courting wealthy donors. So the media was all over that. But now the money race is actually about getting individual donors. Bernie is beating them all with individual donors. All of a sudden, money race? What money race? What are you talking about? So it's obvious. It's so obvious how they form these narratives, how they try and create certain perspectives that they push out there to put onto people. This is why you have a lot of older generation voters supporting candidates like Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg, because that's what the media is pushing out there. The media, when you completely ignore a candidate like Bernie Sanders, who has a 40-year record of saying the same thing, I mean, that in itself is a huge story. How often do you see cable news bring up old Bernie clips? They never do it. But isn't that kind of important to show who this man, how he's been the same person the entire time? Why would you not show that? because it would help to grow Bernie's support. And the corporate media establishment, the political establishment, the corporate establishment in general is against Bernie Sanders. And they don't want to say or do anything that could potentially help him. Occasionally, there'll be a story here and there. CNN had a recent segment where they talked to some voters in Kentucky who support Bernie Sanders. You know, in rare cases, they'll have moments like that. But when it comes to these roundtable discussions, when it comes to the usual Sunday morning political talk shows, he's barely ever mentioned, even though he has the movement, he has the support base. He is the one that is best poised to defeat Trump in a general election. Every single poll that shows Bernie going up against Trump, Bernie beats Trump. And not even just national polls, state by state. So he's also the only one in the Democratic race that's out fundraising Trump. Bernie Sanders is. Yet, again, a point that gets completely lost. Bernie, again, has the most fundraising support in counties that went from Obama to Trump in 2016. Has that point been made ever on cable news? No. So there's an obvious Bernie blackout here. And I did another story. I mean, there's countless stories about this. But another story where he's leading California, and the initial LA Times headline was talking about how Biden and Warren lost support. But they didn't mention that Bernie wasn't first. And it's a pattern of behavior. This is what these headlines normally do. They know most people just read the headline, so they can get away with doing that and say, well, it's in the piece, right? You read the piece, you see it. Yeah, sure. But you know, most people have busy lives. They scroll through, they see headlines. That's what they consume. So when you leave out an important piece like, hey, Bernie Sanders is first in California, yet when you report on other candidates and their leads in various states, you name those candidates in the headline. Bernie Sanders, nope, not mentioned, but mention that Biden and Warren are dropping. Who's in first? I don't know. It's unbelievable, and it's consistent. I also just want to share this, not really related to the story, but I saw this on Twitter, and it goes to the experience that many of us don't have because there isn't this media frenzy around our identity. So Mehdi Hassan here discussing his experience with Southwest Air, saying not a good look for your flight attendant on Southwest to D.C. last night to loudly tell a brown woman in a headscarf she'll be, quote, escorted off the plane for making people feel, quote unquote, uncomfortable because she wanted to sit with her husband and kids. How many times have you been on a plane where people say, hey, do you mind switching seats? You know, I have a better seat than you do. Do you want to sit in this aisle seat while I sit between people, like because I want to sit with my family or whatever? Happens all the time. Somebody in a headscarf does it. All of a sudden, there's a big uproar. So he goes on here. The flight attendant called ground staff onto the plane, complained about the Muslim woman, my wife, so this is Mehdi Hassan's wife, to them and escalated rather than de-escalated the situation, simply because my wife politely asked a guy if he'd give up his seat for our family, which he was fine with. So what was the problem here? He goes on, even her own Southwest colleague from the ground staff who came on board to check things wondered why the flight attendant wouldn't shut up and let things go so we could take off. Quote unquote, why is she escalating this? A passenger from across the aisle also asked aloud. Why indeed? The Southwest Air flight attendant treated you like a venomous snake, another passenger told my wife after we landed in D.C. last night. Thanks, Southwest Air, for ruining the end of our Thanksgiving trip and leaving my wife in tears because she wanted us all to sit together as a family while your flight attendant wanted to single her out and humiliate her. Thanks a lot. And apparently, I think this is a regular thing with Southwest flight staff seem to have form when it comes to mistreating brown Muslim passengers. So this is another story about that. Unbelievable. Again, something a lot of us don't have to deal with, but it's important to understand what people in your situation have to deal with, simply because of how they look or you know, their religion. All right. Let's go from that depressing story to something a little more lighthearted, at least in my mind, lighthearted. And that's Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton. She won't go away. Several things I'm going to prep here. My nose is still itchy. I'm allergic to something, and I don't know what it is. But it's been like a more recent event. This has not been a thing that's plagued me for like my entire life. It's like the past 5 years when I eat something in particular, I get itchy. All right. Almost done my prep. That was a little teaser if you heard that. All right. This story. Few things make me laugh as much as Hillary Clinton, but at the same time enrage me. I did get enraged when I first saw this clip. So Hillary Clinton was on Howard Stern's show where she claimed that Bernie Sanders hurt her chances at the general election. Now, Hillary Clinton won't go away, but even apart from that, she's living in an alternate reality. As I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you how factually wrong she is, even by her own measure. First, let me show you what she said on Howard Stern's show.
Like, hey, let's do everything we can to elect Donald Trump. I mean, those are quotes
Those are
taken.
words they
those
said,
are words that taken, and they also said Bernie Sanders, but you know, that's another for another day.
Do we hate Bernie Sanders?
What?
Do we hate Bernie Sanders?
No, I don't hate anybody.
Bernie could have endorsed you quicker.
He
after
could
you
have.
beat
He
him.
hurt me. There's no doubt about it. He hurt me. But going back to the indictments, because
All
that's
right.
what's really important.
Have you ever spoken to Bernie about that?
No.
You don't
I mean,
talk to him?
I don't talk to him. Yeah, I mean, we did when he finally endorsed me and all that.
But you're upset with him?
No, disappointed. Okay. So, and I hope he doesn't do it again to whoever gets the nomination.
Right.
Once is enough. We have to.
Everyone unite.
We have to join forces, and you know, people could speculate and have some good reason to speculate about how bad it might be with Trump in the White House. Now we know there's no guesswork.
Okay. All right. First of all, Howard Stern egged it on. I mean, that's what he does. He wanted to get a little more out of Hillary Clinton, tried to push her a little bit. But the facts are not on his side in what he was saying, and not on Hillary's side either. Before we even get to that, I just want to remind people what Hillary Clinton did in 2008 when she was still in the race against Barack Obama, when she had zero shot at the nomination. Bernie stayed in until he had no shot. Hillary Clinton stayed in well past her ability to win the nomination in 2008. And here's what she said about why she stayed in the race. Hillary Clinton referenced RFK assassination as a reason to continue the 2008 campaign. Yes, this is not a joke. This is true. Hillary Clinton cited Robert F. Kennedy, his June 1968 assassination as a reason to remain in the presidential race against Barack Obama in 2008. True. Let's even go down and read a little bit more here. Here we go. So here she cited the assassination. I read this part. Quote, we all remember, this is Hillary's quote, we all remember Bobby Kennedy was assassinated in June in California. Clinton told the editorial board of a South Dakota newspaper. I don't understand it, Clinton added, alluding to the calls for her to quit. So here she's saying, well, Robert F. Kennedy, he was assassinated. So it's important that I stay in the race against Barack Obama because you never know. And she's complaining that Bernie stayed in the race too long, that Bernie hurt her somehow. Did Bernie really hurt her? Let's hear what Rachel Maddow said in 2016, right after Bernie Sanders endorsed Hillary Clinton.
There was this lingering question at the end of the Democratic primary as to whether or not Bernie Sanders really meant it when he endorsed Hillary Clinton, whether he really meant it when he said he would work his heart out all over the country to get her elected. Well, he's been working his heart out. It's true. He started campaigning for Clinton really in earnest, basically as a full-time gig a couple of weeks ago. He appears really to be flooring it for Hillary Clinton. Over the first 5 days Bernie Sanders spent on the campaign trail for Hillary Clinton, over 5 days, he did 14 events for her. Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Maine, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, 14 events in 5 days. Yesterday and today and tonight, he's stumping for Hillary Clinton in Colorado. On Wednesday, he's going to Nevada for her. Tomorrow, though, he is spending all day and all night in Red State, Arizona. Bernie Sanders doing a rally for Clinton tomorrow in Flagstaff at 2:30. Then he's doing another rally for Clinton in Tucson at 7. There was this lingering question at...
There you go. Rachel Maddow breaking down how Bernie Sanders did 14 events in 5 days. He went on, I believe, to do 54 events, is the count I'm seeing. 54 events. From what I understand, Bernie Sanders did more events for Hillary Clinton than anybody else, except for her family. So Bill Clinton, Chelsea, because they were with her on the campaign trail, obviously, they did more events than Bernie Sanders. Otherwise, Bernie Sanders did more events than anybody else. Yet, he really hurt me during the campaign. Oh, no question about it, no doubt. How about what Hillary said herself?
Vote for them and vote for what they represent. You know, I really want to thank my friend Bernie Sanders for everything that he has done. I got to serve with Bernie. We were colleagues in the Senate. I saw firsthand his commitment to the people of Vermont and to the values that have guided his life. And when we faced each other in the primary, here's what I was so proud about. We ran a campaign on the issues that matter to the American people. And I think because of that campaign, we were able to raise a lot of the issues that you heard Bernie talking about to the level that they are part of this presidential campaign. And they will be part of our agenda after January 20th, Bernie. And I've got to say, too, this election's been a lot more fun now that we're on the same side. And I want to thank Bernie for everything he's done. He's crisscrossing our country, energizing people, getting folks off the sidelines and engaged in politics. And there's no question that his efforts are paying off. And what he said at the beginning of his remarks is absolutely true. My name may be on the ballot, but it is not about me. It's not about my opponent. It's not about Bernie. It's not about David or Deborah. It is about you and your lives and what we're going to do together. Vote for them.
She is so full of crap. So here she is. November 3rd, 2016, thanking Bernie Sanders for everything he did to go around the country on the campaign trail for her, get people out and engaged to support her. Yet, on Howard Stern, no question Bernie Sanders hurt me. This is why you can't give these people even an inch, because they're not going to give you credit regardless. So, F her, F all of these people who don't give a shit about anybody except for themselves, these ego-driven campaigns. The fact that you think Hillary Clinton really thought this campaign wasn't about her, as she says at the end there, not about me or Bernie, or it's about the people. Do you really think that somebody with the slogan "I'm with her" Somebody that ran on the slogan, I'm with her. Do you really think Hillary Clinton didn't think this race was about her? Of course. Of course she thought it was about her. It was all about her. That's all she cares about. That's all she continues to care about. So you have this person here just completely lying today about what Bernie Sanders did for her. So effing ungrateful for everything he did. Going around the country, campaigned more for her than anybody else except for her own husband. Did more than anybody else did except for her family. And today she's complaining, oh, he definitely hurt me. Just disgusting. These people are disgusting. So that wasn't lighthearted. I can't stand her. I thought I was going to laugh a little more than I did at that whole thing, but no. She's enraging. At how ingrateful she fucking is. What a horrible person. All right, this stream's too long. How many stories do I got left here? Let me get to some super chats and then I'll get back to you. So I still got to do. I may skip this story. There's a story about health insurance lobbyists writing op-eds for politicians against Medicare for all. It kind of requires me to read the report to really detail it to you. So I'm not sure if I can effectively really deliver that. So I may just save that one. But Bernie firing back at Buttigieg, I'll do that. Corbyn getting attacked no matter what he says, I'll do that. Okay, got some fun stories left. Let's do some super chats first. Man, I still feel worked up. I haven't got that worked up in a long time. Why is she out there? Just go the fuck away. All she cares about is herself. Leave. Go away. Nobody likes you. Leave. I mean, she single-handedly helped Tulsi Gabbard's campaign by attacking her. It shows you just how unliked she is. Okay, I stopped at pantsuited syphilis. Now that I read that comment again, that's like actually a nice way to describe Hillary Clinton. Pantsuited syphilis. It's maybe the nicest description of her I've ever heard. Hillary is pantsuited syphilis. Fantastic. Okay, it's Sandman sent super chat in saying, "Hey David, have you read Bernie's new internet infrastructure plan? It's extremely comprehensive and would be huge for rural communities like mine." I saw the report. I didn't have time to read it, which is why I didn't cover it today in this thing. But I did see that he has basically guaranteeing high-speed broadband internet to everybody in the country. That's amazing. 100% that should happen. I believe that's also in the Labour Party plan in the UK as well. So that's very, absolutely is essential. And I may do a story on that next week when I actually read the full report. Obi Alfred says, LMAO, Rational National should change his username to Moose Daddy. Not happening, but it's pretty funny. Oliver Kant sends £5 in, saying, "Vote for Labour if you're in Johnson's constituency. It'll be so sweet seeing Johnson lose his own seat." It can happen. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. Totally, I support that. Moonborn Unicorn sends its super chat saying it's probably cheese. There's good vegan cheeses. Yeah. It might be cheese. I don't know if it is. But there is for a while. So I'm basically a vegetarian. I've stopped eating meat. I largely try to avoid dairy, so I don't buy milk. I drink alternative forms of milk. I don't have cheese very often, but I did have pizza last night. And here's the thing. When it comes to vegan cheese, I prefer to have no cheese at all than vegan cheese. Vegan cheese maybe it depends the brand and everything. I did have really good vegan pizza in Portland, Oregon. Has fantastic. This is a fantastic pizza place that does great vegan pizza. Their vegan cheese was fine, but largely I just For some reason, whether it's the texture, the taste, something about vegan cheese doesn't really sit well with me in my mouth. So I generally just go with no cheese at all if I want to avoid cheese. But if I can find what they used in Portland, then maybe vegan cheese will be all right. PJ Coyne says, how important is Pramila Jayapal's endorsement? There's an exclamation mark there. Did she endorse? Anybody? Did I miss that story? Did that happen while I was prepping? The only reason I think that she endorsed is because you put an exclamation mark, but maybe she didn't. But I would say it's huge. Pramila Jayapal's great. Though I'm not saying anything about her endorsing. Don't trick me like that. Get my hopes up. Well, here's the thing. I think her endorsement, it's important for me. I don't really know if Pramila Jayapal's endorsement really has an impact, like a national impact. Like, she's not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She does, great work in the House, but in terms of in terms of her having like any kind of following, I don't really know. So while I would definitely appreciate a Pramila Jayapal endorsement, I don't know how much of an impact it actually has on voters. Brian B says, notice how they always say Warren/Sanders. Yes, great point. So referring to the CNN clip, this is this is how the mainstream press references Bernie Sanders. They don't. They say Warren. So if they're talking about the progressive movement or progressive policy, they mention Warren. You see this all the time. You see how Jake Tapper brought up Warren there to Mehdi Hassan at the end of his question. That's how they reference, even though Sanders has the movement, the support, you look at any data point, he's the one with the support. They mention Warren instead. It's intentional. Matthew Jones says, really fresh vegetables can cause an allergic reaction due to the presence of certain proteins. Look up oral allergies. It's definitely not fresh vegetables. I don't have a problem with vegetables. Jaguar Rose says, we should just call it single payer because Medicare for All has been watered down by moderates to mean whatever they want. The debate is public option or single payer. That's a fair point. I guess the worry is, single payer has to be maybe explained. People already know, Americans largely, I think, already know what Medicare is because Medicare exists. So thinking Medicare for All kind of explains what Medicare is. But maybe saying single payer Medicare for all would kind of cover both bases. All right. Actually, let me read the next one and then I'll pause there. Balthazar says, but Bloomberg has been rated, quote unquote, top Bloomberg by Bloomberg every week for the past 5 years. Very funny. Okay. I'm going to pause it there and finish these stories off. And then we'll get to all the super chats. Great stream today. 1,500 people. I'm impressed. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate all the support. All the what am I trying to say here? All the involvement. All the dedication people have to watching this. All right, where am I? Bernie firing back at Buttigieg. Here we go. Here we go. I like this one. Just a little prep in here. Buttigieg is another one where just, man, it is so easy to hate the guy because of how dishonest he is. Disingenuous. Especially if you see Pete Buttigieg wrote a paper when he was 18 years old, I believe, in like 2000 talking about how great Bernie Sanders is. Now, you see him now, Buttigieg is just unbelievable. Will do whatever he can for power. Even though ultimately what he's doing is not going to help him attain power. It just helps him attain big donors. So Pete Buttigieg has been claiming that he doesn't support free public college because he doesn't want to pay for the kids of millionaires and billionaires to go to school. Now, this is a completely dishonest thing to say. This is actually a Republican talking point, a conservative talking point. I broke down in a video last week how Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez completely exposed how BS Pete Buttigieg's argument is, essentially saying that rich kids can attend a public school. So why would public college be different? We don't cut rich kids out of public school. We don't ban rich kids from other public services like firefighters or libraries. She also talked about how most wealthy kids go to Ivy League schools anyway, and they don't go to public college. So again, free public college means there's a free public college in every state. It doesn't mean you go to Harvard for free. It means there's a free public college option. That's what free public college means. Pete Buttigieg is against that. Bernie Sanders is for that. Another aspect of why it's great. Universal programs are tougher to dismantle, and it's also good for classrooms to be socioeconomically integrated. So to have people that come from wealthy families going to the same school as people that come from poor families, it's good for the culture to have that. So Pete Buttigieg is against free public college. So let me show you his the first. So he put this in an ad initially that I showed in a different video last week, but then he was asked about this, and this is how he defended himself.
I just think rich people ought to be able to pay their own tuition. I have nothing against them. I just think that if you're in a position to pay full freight, then you should. And I'm also concerned about a narrative emerging that ignores the fact that not everybody goes to college. This is not the same thing as K through 12. This is not the same thing as Social Security, because college is not for everybody. Now, I want everybody who wants to go to college to have the chance. I want to make sure cost is never a barrier. But where I come from, 3 out of 4 people don't have a college degree. And if the message we're sending to them is that you need a college degree in order to get by in life, in order to prosper, in order to succeed, we're leaving most Americans out, and I think they're just missing that very important fact. I very much agree with the part about raising funds from the wealthy, just not in agreement about spending it on the wealthy in the case of college tuition when they can very well pay their own way, and I think they should.
So dishonest. Again, free public college is a free public college option. Rich people largely go to Ivy League schools anyway, but there'd be the free option there. This would have huge benefits for the vast majority of people. Now, look at how Bernie Sanders, because he was questioned about this on Chris Hayes' show. Here is how Bernie Sanders responded to Pete Buttigieg's lies on free college.
What do you say to that argument that there's no reason to pay for people who can pay full freight?
Well, I say Buttigieg is wrong on both counts. Number one, of course, when we talk about making higher education, public colleges and universities tuition-free, we mean not only college, but we mean trade schools as well. There are millions of good jobs out there in construction and all kinds of areas where people are good at working with their hands. They don't want to go to college. And of course, we are going to make tuition free for those people. So what he's saying is not accurate. Second of all, there is the issue of universality. I'm very glad that Mr. Buttigieg is worried that I have been too easy on upper income people and the millionaires and billionaires, that I'm going to allow their kids to go to public colleges and universities. Just by the way, as they do go to public schools right now, Trump's kids can go to any public school, elementary school, high school in the country, tuition free. But the point is, I happen to believe that when you talk about programs like Social Security, like health care, like higher education, they should be universal. The way you pay for them, and the way I do it, not the way Buttigieg does it, is I do demand that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, that the very rich will start paying their fair share of taxes, as will corporate America. You pay for it by raising revenue from the very rich, but then you say in a very simple way that any person who wants a higher education, college, trade school should be able to do it. You know, right now, that's what we do with Social Security. It is a popular program. It is a universal program.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC.
There you go. Bernie addressed that perfectly. So, I mean, this idea that free public college is somehow crazy when taxes are used to pay for society. roads, bridges, libraries, schools, firefighters, healthcare, hopefully. The idea is that there should be a base level that we all get to enjoy. There should be a base level of living that we all have. That's what it's about. So this idea that, I mean, if Buttigieg is going to argue that why are people paying, or why do you want a plan that where you pay for the college of kids of millionaires and billionaires, then shouldn't he also be arguing that rich kids shouldn't be going to public school either? He should also be arguing that we should be tearing rich kids out of public school, because why should I be paying for rich kids to go to public school? Like, that's the same argument. And how dumb does that sound? So Pete Buttigieg is being completely dishonest because he has a ton of corporate backers, a ton of wealthy backers. His entire platform is not his own platform. It's a platform devised by special interest. That's all it is. So, I mean, look, a lot is being made of Buttigieg's growth in his support, but really it's only the first two states because he's pouring a ton of money into those states. And any other support he's gaining is because the media keeps talking about him like he's gaining all the support when it's all being manufactured. So he may be raising in the polls, but there's nothing there. There's nothing to him. Any moment that can be used to poke holes into Pete Buttigieg, whether it's his record, which is also horrible, or his platform, which, as you see, is ridiculous, then it should be done. This is what needs to be focused on. Pete Buttigieg is a horrible candidate. So the more we see of this, of these kinds of attacks on Buttigieg, the better. Sweet. That was my last serious story. Which means, I mean, I got some more things to share here, but they're a little more laid back because you'll see. You'll see. This thread is ridiculous. I might not even get through this entire thread that you're seeing right here in front of you because of how crazy it is. Actually, maybe I will turn this into a story. Let me shoot it as such and see what happens. First, though, let's get to some super chats. I don't know why I said it that way. Kelsey Jones sends a super chat in saying 100. Thanks, Kelsey. Thank you for the 100 sticker. Bob Corrado says the enemy, Bernie of your enemy media establishment is your friend. It's really that simple. Yes. Yes, it is. Michael Cuomo, I recognize your name from last week, says, is it possible all cable news channels to go away? And yes, I know I have the same last name as CNN, one talking head, no relation to them. Is it possible for all cable news channels to go away? No, it's not. I mean, here's what I wonder, though. If Bernie becomes president, what's happening to these cable news stations? Like, is Fox News going to be just as bad as CNN? And I mean, in many ways, CNN and MSNBC are already as bad as Fox News. But like, are they just all three networks? Are they all going to be going after Bernie all the time? Like, what's going to happen? So I'm actually kind of curious about that, because historically, you know, MSNBC and CNN and Fox News, they've been protective of whoever is in power on their team. So, you know, Fox News, obviously protective of Donald Trump because he's in power. He's on their team. MSNBC protective of the Democratic Party, of Obama because he's on their team. CNN, same thing. I mean, with the Democratic Party, essentially. Though I will say CNN is better than MSNBC. It just is. They bring Cenk on sometimes. Anna Kasparian's on sometimes. Chris Cuomo isn't as bad as some of the hosts on MSNBC. Occasionally, Chris Hayes does some good work, so MSNBC does have some moments like that. Lawrence O'Donnell called out Pete Buttigieg last night. That may be a story I can cover in the future. So they'll have moments, but none of them are pro-Bernie. So what happens in a situation where Bernie's the nominee and then becomes president? I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing what that all looks like. Where am I? Anna Bird, retired, says, my daughter, 25, says you must be allergic to bullshit. Oh, because of my nose itching. Sorry, there was a J in your. I was wondering if that was supposed to be a different word. Maybe that's what it is. My nose did start itching around when I did the story on Michael Bloomberg, so potentially that's what it is. But thank you, Anna, for the super chat. Hyena Vaughn says national polls show Tulsi at 0%. Time to drop out. Yeah. At this point, honestly, look, if we're being honest with ourselves, if you're being honest with yourself, because I don't support Tulsi, if you're being honest with yourself, not you, but whoever supports Tulsi watching this, if Tulsi stays in when the voting begins, when Iowa, the caucus starts, all she's really doing is hurting Bernie Sanders because she is a potential anti-establishment vote. If you're anti-establishment, you're going to support Bernie Sanders. I mean, you're not going to go from Tulsi Gabbard to Joe Biden or Tulsi Gabbard to Pete Buttigieg or even to Elizabeth Warren. You're going to go from Tulsi to Bernie Sanders. So if she stays in this race when the voting starts, all she's doing is hurting Bernie Sanders. You have to acknowledge that. And for anybody trying to say, well, she's going to stay in and get delegates for Bernie Sanders, that's why she's staying in. You have to reach 15% in a state to get delegates. Tulsi Gabbard ain't reaching 15%. Pete Buttigieg in most states wouldn't reach 15% at this point, and he's all over the press. So this idea that she's going to get delegates for Bernie Sanders is just completely delusional. She's not. She's not going to hit 15% in any state. It's not happening. So all she's doing at this point is hurting Bernie Sanders. I don't know why she's in this race still, unless that's her intention. I mean, she has defended Joe Biden a lot, if you've noticed. She has not called him out once. She's been asked multiple times, whether on a debate stage, in interviews, been asked about Joe Biden, asked about Hunter Biden. She completely avoids going after him. Ask yourself why. She's willing to go after anybody else. She avoids going after Joe Biden. Louis Denoa says, or I should say Louis Denoa. Sorry, whatever your name is. Louis Denoa says HRC needs to just go away. I completely agree. Thank you for the super chat. Let me stop there. So let me do this Corbyn story. And then I got a couple of funny clips to share. And then I'll do all the super chats in the world and then get out of here. And maybe I'll take some, I would love to do random chats as well. The problem is it goes way too fast. And I usually get a lot of super chats that I don't have time to go to the typical chat. But if I can, I will. All right, what am I doing? I am doing Corbyn. So I recently came across this thread on Twitter showing that no matter what Jeremy Corbyn says or does, he gets attacked anyways. Now, this thread is so long that I don't even think I'm going to read through all of it because of how I haven't read through all of it because of how long it is. But when we get going, you're going to understand you're going to see the pattern here. So as Colin Miller, he's an author, I believe, author of The Frying Pan of Spain. Starts off here. There is a possibility Jeremy Corbyn will be Prime Minister of the UK by the end of next week. There is no better time to highlight how, no matter what Corbyn does or whatever position he takes, his critics will attack him, even if they totally contradict themselves. Thread. This gets crazy. So let's start here. Let's see if I can open this up a little bit. All right. Corbyn opposes the exploitation of foreign sweatshop workers. Labour MPs compare him to Nigel Farage. Corbyn defends migrants. Labour MPs criticize him for not listening to public's immigration concerns. It goes on. Corbyn is so basically each of these is comparing one to the other. They're the opposite position. So whatever Corbyn says, people attack him regardless. Corbyn is wrong to prioritize the Labour Party over the public, the Observer. Corbyn is wrong to prioritize the public over the Labour Party, the Observer. Again, two stories on opposite sides of the issue. Corbyn appeals too much to the middle class. Corbyn doesn't appeal enough to the middle class. Corbyn is a red Tory who doesn't care about problems of those on low wages. John Rento. Corbyn is anti-capitalist and spends too much time criticizing companies who pay low wages. John Rento. Corbyn's problem? He's too radical. Communism added to URL when not relevant to story. Andrew Ronsley. Corbyn's problem? He isn't radical enough. Andrew Ronsley. Let's go on. Corbyn's problem? He's both too centrist. He's also too much of a fringe figure. Both are argued in the same piece by Tom Peck. Goes on. Corbyn's problem? He's too elitist. Corbyn's problem? He's too populist. By the way, so if you want this full thread, look up this guy's name. You'll find it. Miller Colin, December 2nd. Just look through his tweets. You'll see it. Jeremy Corbyn is too nostalgic, argues John Harris. Jeremy Corbyn is not nostalgic enough, argues John Harris. It's unbelievable. It doesn't matter what he does. Corbyn is too similar to Trump, says James O'Brien. Corbyn makes Trump look like a genius, says James O'Brien. Corbyn is not like Trump, says James O'Brien. Corbyn is even worse than Trump, says James O'Brien. Corbyn is too simple. Corbyn is simply too principled. Corbyn is a sellout who isn't principled at all. Jeremy Corbyn has no chance of power whatsoever. Brandon O'Neill. Jeremy Corbyn's chance of power should terrify everyone. Brandon O'Neill. Okay, I can't read through all these. It goes on and on. Jeremy Corbyn is a snowflake who is too sensitive. Brendan O'Neill. Jeremy Corbyn is too insensitive. Brendan O'Neill. Unbelievable. Corbyn is a threat to life as we know it. Brendan O'Neill. This guy really hates Corbyn. Corbyn is no threat whatsoever to life as we know it. Brendan O'Neill. Oh, maybe I'll do like one more. Jeremy Corbyn is not a communist. Brendan O'Neill. Jeremy Corbyn is a communist. Brendan O'Neill. Holy moly. One more. Jeremy Corbyn has no interest in power. Nick Cohen. Jeremy Corbyn is too interested in power. Nick Cohen. Okay, you get the point. Let's just hear from the man himself what he feels about his job.
Are you just exhausted with all of this?
No.
You must be. I mean, everybody's exhausted this time of year. It's coming up to Christmas. There's so much more to do anyway. And yet you're doing this day in, day out. Aren't you just like, don't you just want to sit back and put your feet up and go, is it all worth it?
No, not a bit of it.
Why?
You get up each day and you go out and you do what you believe in. You do your campaigning.
Is there as much pride in the job? Because sometimes I think, God, for a politician, is there as much pride in your job?
I've represented my constituency since 1983, and I love the people I represent. I know many, many very, very well, of course. I know their families and so on. It feels like home and family. And I believe in public service. I believe in representing people. And I passionately believe in a country where we don't have homeless people, where we don't have food banks, where we don't have 4 million children going to school hungry or poor or unable to achieve their best in life. And I want to bring about a fairer, more just, more equal society. That's what I've spent my whole life doing. And this, I travel all around the country, meeting people. Last night I was talking to a group of homeless people in Hastings, but also talking to people who are wanting to expand their work and their businesses. The two things actually go together. And so the wisdom that's there amongst people all over the country is something that absolutely inspires me.
There you go. This man actually cares about people. Just like Bernie Sanders. He has a lifelong record, Jeremy Corbyn does, of fighting for people, fighting for the average person. He actually cares. That's why he does this work. Despite all the attacks, like I just showed you, he continues this because he actually wants to change things for the better, change things for to help the lives of the vast majority of people. So there you go. I just got one funny clip to share. This is very Canadian. This kind of blew up this week in Canada. I'm not sure how many Americans or anybody else saw this, but it's pretty hilarious. So Doug Ford is the Premier of Ontario. Very disliked. Let's just say it that way. People don't like Doug Ford. And there's like a teacher strike looming. So listen to this reporter goes out to ask some kids about the potential strike. and to get their thoughts on Doug Ford. Watch what happens.
Well, I think Doug Ford is a really stubborn man, and he deserves to go to jail. And
So I want to ask you about what they told you inside the school.
They just told us that there's going to be no school tomorrow because Doug Ford is you know all the teachers, right? Doug Ford is envisioning in his mind, he's probably thinking about Timbits right now. And I'm probably telling him he is a Timbit himself.
What grade are you in, sir?
All right. If you don't know what a Timbit is because you're American or from some other country, it's a donut. So we have these small little donuts at Tim Hortons called Timbits. That's what it is. Just the future of political commentary is in great hands with kids like this. Calling Doug Ford a Timbit, that he's thinking about Timbits right now. I just love it. The kids are all right. That's what I got to say. One more clip, then all the super chats in the world. Let's go to this one here. Old Bernie clip. Here's a good one. This is from the same. So Erica, I think I'm saying your last name right, Blanc, has been sharing a lot of these. So this is from the same clip, or the same, I guess, series of clips that I showed you earlier when Bernie was talking about climate change at the beginning of this stream. Here is a piece from the end of it.
I had a forum with some young people from Germany who came over. And this young lady they had visited. They went to New York City the week before, and she was visibly agitated about what she had seen in the city, of people eating out of garbage cans and sleeping out on the street. She could not believe what she had seen. We get used to it because we see it all around us. In the same sense, your point is, imagine we take for granted that robots, it's perfectly normal, somebody comes up, well, you're no longer needed here because I have a robot to replace you. You have no say about that decision. By the way, we're moving our factory to Mexico. Thank you for your 40 years of labor. Here's a little gold watch for you. And you have nothing to say about that. You've been beaten down, and you understand how powerless you are. We take that for granted. That's who we are. And I think that whole process of dehumanizing people, making us feel much less than human, making us accept that, is an awful and terrible thing. And
Yep. There you go. Just like Corbyn, you can see he gets it. He understands what people go through. And they're both trying to work the system to help people. Again, this is 1991. All right. Let me get to the super chats now. I've heard many of them. If you're hearing that background noise, Bernie saying rational national priorities, that is a Streamlabs thing. Streamlabs is a streaming platform, and I have yet to figure out how to mute it. But I will at some point figure out how to mute that. Okay. Where was I? All right. Looking through the super chats, trying to figure out where I stopped. Tulsi, Louis D. Noia. I did your name or your super chat. Okay. I think I'm at Rashad Bozeman. Says $10. Very generous. Thank you. By the way, I mean, all your super chats are generous. I just tend to mention, I mean, $10 is like a lot. But thank you. I feel like there's a lot of blame on us who didn't vote when the DNC cheated Bernie. But it's the DNC's fault why I stayed home. It's their fault way more than my fault, and I'm so tired of the blaming of the voters. Here's the thing. I don't think blaming the voters really accomplishes anything. Like, here's what kind of bothers me. So I don't blame you for being disillusioned, but there are people that say voted for Jill Stein or didn't vote at all that are then vote shaming people that voted for Hillary Clinton. Like, if you're against vote shaming, then be against vote shaming. You can't say, hey, don't shame me for voting for Jill Stein and then hate people that voted for Hillary Clinton. It's obviously hypocritical. So I don't vote shame regardless. Again, if I was in the U.S., I would have voted for Hillary Clinton. Even though I showed you how much I hate her earlier. I got really worked up because it wasn't about voting for her. It was about voting against Trump. So we see now how destructive Trump is. If it wasn't already obvious before the election, it's clearly obvious now. So that's why at the time, back in 2016, I was telling people early on in my channel, saying that, look, I don't support Hillary Clinton, but Trump is not who you want to support here, or you don't want to have any opportunity of Trump winning this election. So I encourage people to vote for Hillary Clinton. But at the same time, you can't blame people for being angry at Hillary or angry at the DNC. I totally get it, 100% understand. So yeah, I don't believe in voter shaming. Neon Noir says, Slava Stalin. Don't know what you're referring to, but thank you. Thank you for the super chat, for the 10 pounds. Balthazar says, I ate vegan for a week. Turns out they taste like pork. What tastes like? I forget what I was saying earlier about vegan food. The cheese? I forget the conversation. But thank you for the super chat. By the way, if you actually want to change your diet, and not even just vegan, but anything, it takes like 3 weeks. So I've like cut out, way in the past now, but I cut out soda a long time ago. It takes about 3 weeks for you to get used to it. So if you like are craving whatever you're cutting out in that 3 weeks, just wait 3 weeks. See what happens. If you can hold yourself to 3 weeks, I think you can actually change your diet, whatever it is. So I've noticed that with soda. I noticed that with meat when I cut out meat. And if you're somewhere where you actually have like other options, like good vegan options, good vegan replacements for something like chicken or for like burgers, that also helps too. Because like I love chicken wings. Let me just say, chicken was like a major part of my diet before I stopped eating all meat. So even today, it's like I'll have cravings for chicken wings, but I can have, if I have the chicken wing sauce, like the sauce is why I like chicken wings. It's not because of the chicken. So I can go to, luckily I'm in an area where I can go to get vegan chicken wings. So I have that option. A lot of people don't have that option. But if you get, barbecue sauce, put it on anything, like cauliflower, as an example, is used often to replace chicken wings. You bread cauliflower, put it in chicken wing sauce. It's almost as good. And I know that sounds crazy, but like it's more, when it comes to meat, at least for me, again, I'm not trying to push, I'm not a vegan at all. I'm a vegetarian. But if you are trying to avoid meat or it interests you at all, there are ways to replace the flavor, because a lot of the flavor isn't really about the meat itself. It's about how it's seasoned. It's about the sauce. So it's about how it's prepared, all that stuff. And especially, I mean, if you haven't tried the Beyond Meat Burger yet, you got to try it. It is completely, like, I think it will fool a lot of people. If you just buy somebody a Beyond Meat Burger and don't tell them that it's not meat, I really think most people wouldn't even have any idea that it's not meat. Bill Sales here says, why hasn't HRC's evil exploded her head right off? As if like somebody gets to like a point where they're so evil that they just blow up. That's a funny image, but no. Moonborn Unicorn says, I live in Portland. Good vegan cashew cheese here. Maybe that's what it is. Portland, Oregon, I gotta say, if I couldn't live in Toronto, Portland, Oregon is a place I might think of living. I also like New York City a lot. I like LA, though LA, when it comes to living expenses, is a little tougher. LA is really expensive. So is New York, but I think New York, because there's I don't know. New York has good infrastructure when it comes to public transit. And I know some New Yorkers right now just laughed at me because I said that, but like, considering where it goes, like the subway in New York goes everywhere. In Toronto, it doesn't. We have like 2 subway lines. It's absurd. So going from Toronto to New York City, it's like a whole new world when it comes to where public infrastructure, or I should say public transit, can actually take you. Especially when it comes to the subway. And subway is what I prefer. Amy Whitman sends a $10 super chat in. Thank you, Amy. Michael Zwagaft. Man, you guys, I wish I could pronounce last names properly. Says, why do you have such strong interest in U.S. politics? So it's like a number of reasons. My entry point into politics was through U.S. politics. So through like the Colbert Report and Jon Stewart's show, and then eventually the Young Turks. I kind of got more into politics because of American politics. So that's kind of where my whole interest began. But also just the fact that, what happens in America has an impact globally, and not even just foreign policy, but something as basic, and not even just like, war, but something as basic as like drug legislation. Like I think it's 1971, I believe, or late 70s. There was this UN resolution that essentially banned all psychedelics, and that was pushed by the US. And I believe that had a massive negative impact on the rest of the world because psychedelics have endless medicinal benefits. So like that's just one small example on how US interests affect the rest of the world. So yeah, and if you have like a Bernie Sanders presidency and a Jeremy Corbyn in the UK as prime minister, I mean, you're going to see a global shift. Not to mention if Lula can come back into power in Brazil, there will be a massive global shift. You have these superpowers pushing for essentially a movement of workers and of the poor and the middle class, and bringing down how crazy extreme wealth has become. I mean, you will really have a global shift, but you need superpowers like that to be in charge to make it happen. When you have small countries, even like Canada, I mean, our politics is nowhere near where they should be in terms of progressive or left-wing legislation. But even if if we got like, Jagmeet Singh and he became prime minister, it's not going to lead to a global shift. It's just Canada. It's, it's not that many people. It's 30 million people. So we're not going to, and it's not even just about like the population. It's about the actual power globally, like what the voices in power have, their impact they have globally. Canada, yes, we're in the G7, we have some power, but in terms of the actual superpowers, you have the US and the UK. They're the ones where if they change leadership, if government changes in these two countries, there will be a massive shift. Lloyd Tucker sends a super chat in saying, from the same corporatist hacks that brought you Obamacare, try all new Buddhacare. It's exactly the same, but we have a new spokesperson. Yeah, that's a horrible name, but but that's I mean, yeah, that's kind of what it is. He'll say it's a public option, which it is. So I guess it's more than Obamacare, but it's what Obamacare fought for back in 2008 and didn't really fight for it. Pretended to care to push for a public option in 2008. Yeah, and it's funny now because now that we have the current lens on healthcare from looking at this through Medicare for All, we can recognize how a public option might actually be worse than what exists right now because of how it would essentially give the opportunity to corporate interests to drain that system of resources and say, hey, look, Medicare for All won't work because the public option didn't work because we drained it of resources. So it wouldn't be a proper representation of what Medicare for All could become. So a public option may actually undercut the ability to get Medicare for All through. Zachary Fluke says the audacity of Clinton is jaw-dropping. She has ridden Bernie off to protect her own ego. 100%. She can't fathom us proving that we were right in 2016 because that proves she was wrong. Run DNC. 100%. Thanks, Zachary. I agree with you completely. PJ Coyne says, shit, it was a mistake. I'm half asleep. Is that a previous? Oh, same person that said Pramila Jayapal, how important is her endorsement, with the exclamation mark. So the exclamation mark was a mistake. No worries, PJ. Balthazar says, wealthy kid, quote, well, I did get into Harvard from a legacy admission, and I am worth $50 million, but that free community college seems nice. Yeah, exactly. The Buttigieg argument is completely empty. Bryce Inman Zisk says, love the work you do, David. 2 questions. 1, silly question. Do you think Trudeau is really Castro's illegitimate son? No, I don't. But it's funny if you look up Castro and Trudeau, and it's a funny thing to think about, but I don't think it's true. Number 2, actual question. Your favorite news sources or favorite authors / journalists? Nathan J. Robinson. is fantastic. So current affairs, Nathan J. Robinson, look up anything he does. He has a breakdown on Buttigieg. I mean, he has countless breakdowns on Ben Shapiro. I mean, his writing is perfect. It's on point. I mean, he's always on the money. I think he's fantastic. So that stands out to me. When it comes to other publications, Jacobin's a great publication. I read often. Where else? New Republic is pretty good. I don't know. I kind of lived on Twitter. So anything that kind of blows up on Twitter, I tend to see, or not even just blow up, but like people that are in this kind of leftist progressive circle, when they share things, I see it. So, I mean, even pieces in The Guardian, again, The Guardian isn't great all the time, but there are great pieces in The Guardian that I like to read as well. Anand Giodardis, I'm still reading his book on, I forget what it's called now. But essentially it's about how wealthy people try to kind of say that their wealth is better in their hands because they start these foundations and do all this stuff, when in reality, if we tax them more, that could actually be used to better use than what billionaires or multimillionaires choose to do with their money. So Anand Giodardis, or I think it's Giodardis, Anand Giodardis. Great writer. He's on MSNBC every now and then on Morning Joe. So check him out. Obi Alfred. David, Tulsi is the spoiler. She rented a home in New Hampshire. Yeah, I agree. She rented a home in New Hampshire, really? That means she's going to Iowa and New Hampshire. Yeah. Tulsi needs to drop out of the race. Balthazar says, just a reminder that the Tory voters don't get a say in their leader. Corbyn won by the highest margins for leadership by his constituents repeatedly. Tory voters don't get a say in their leader. But didn't how do they choose Boris Johnson? Aren't those Tory members that do that? I got to look more into how they choose leaders. Can you hear my stomach? That was like a 30-second rumbling. Okay. Black Dragonfly 89 says, Tulsi and Bernie are close friends. She's wrecking the establishment. Under the radar, helping Bernie. She's a powerful ally and won't take his votes. Her existence in the primary inherently takes his votes. Who else are her votes going to that are in the top three? They're not going to go to Biden unless, she endorses him like she might be, the way she's been defending Joe Biden. But they're not going to go to Joe Biden. They're not going to go to Warren. They're going to go to Bernie. So, I mean, you can't deny this. Absolutely. If Tulsi Gabbard stays in the race when voting starts, absolutely it will have an effect, a negative effect on Bernie Sanders. 100%. There's no denying that. Jen Pepper says, Happy Friday. Thanks, Jen. Happy Friday to you too. I'm hearing more come in. This may be the longest stream we've had. Quite possibly. See if I can lean back a little bit here. See if I just chill back. Is that weird? Maybe. It's because my camera's focus is a little too particular. If I go back too far, like there, I'm out of focus. Okay, where did I stop? Oh yeah, I just saw someone say robot. Did you notice in that last Bernie clip I showed you how he said robot? That's why it was screwing me up earlier when I was reading the word robot, because I was thinking about Bernie Sanders saying robot. Where was I? There we go. Mateus N says, have you given any thoughts how you would handle Bernie winning the nomination but losing the election and the future of progressivism? He won't lose the election. Won't lose. There's zero. I'm telling you, zero. Unless okay, if it's Bernie versus Trump and there's no funny business and people can actually vote at the polls and there's no, suppressing the vote, nothing crazy going on, Bernie will win 100%. So if Bernie, so that's not happening. If Bernie loses the nomination, which is possible because you have to get a lot of Democratic voters out to vote in I mean, or I should say, the primary Democratic voters mainly are voting in the Democratic primary. Obviously, a lot of states are closed states, so even if you're independent, you can't vote for Bernie Sanders. You have to be registered to vote in your state on the day and vote for him. It's less open than a general election is. So winning the nomination is a little tougher. If he loses the nomination, the movement's still going to exist. Like, I'm not too worried about the future, honestly, because we see young people, and not even just, in America, but the UK, worldwide, people are more engaged now than ever. And it's because a lot of people around the world are feeling the impacts of wealth inequality. It's having a direct negative impact on their lives. And as long as that exists, people are going to be a little more engaged in politics and push for movements. And push within a movement. And you also have future leaders like AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ro Khanna. So I'm not all that worried. There is a big future there for the movement. Moonborn Unicorn says stenographer thought he said roll, but not robot. Thought he said roll? Is that what let me read that. I thought it said robot in the unless you're just joking. That'd be funny if they didn't write robot. No, it says robots. I think you're joking. But yeah. I don't know if I've heard someone say you're robot before. Like robot. It's like a frog. All right. Westside Beaches says, doesn't seem like the Queen of England and her ultra-rich goons is being smearing Corbyn since the Iraq War. Sorry, I got to read this over again. Doesn't seem like the Queen of England and her ultra-rich goons is being smearing. Okay, so it's not just the sentence doesn't make any sense. Doesn't seem like the Queen of England and her ultra-rich goons is being smearing Corbyn since the Iraq War and try to imprison him. Your thoughts? I would give my thoughts if I know what your comment says. The sentence is kind of all over the place. And so if you're trying to say the Queen of England and her ultra-rich goons have been smearing Corbyn since the Iraq War, I would assume so. I don't know about the Queen of England, but I know the wealthy, the elites are obviously against Jeremy Corbyn. And yeah, Corbyn's been on the right side since the Iraq. I mean, from what I've seen, he's been on the right side for a while. I mean, when it came to the apartheid in South Africa, he was on the correct side then when the political party, or when, I believe even his own party was on the wrong side of that. But the government definitely was on the wrong side of that. So just like Bernie Sanders, Corbyn has been on the right side of these issues long before anybody else. He's been a leader. When you see people like that, whether it's on the Iraq War, on apartheid, whatever it is, you have to hold on to those people. Recognize they are leaders and put trust in them and support them, because these are people that understand how things work when they're on the correct side of an issue, when the entire establishment, everybody else is against them. Polly Fufu says, I'd vote for Biden, but I'm told I'm too old and fat. Womp womp. Yeah, I covered that yesterday. That was funny. Biden, the thing too, I don't think that's actually even going to hurt him, calling that voter old and fat. People will think, just like how people love Donald Trump saying what's on his mind. They'll be like, oh, look at Joe Biden just being an honest guy, even though when it comes to actual policy, just like Donald Trump, Joe Biden is completely dishonest in policy and what he actually supports or what he actually fights for. But sure, I guess Biden's honest when it comes to calling somebody fat, because that's on his mind. But is that really a good thing? I would say not. Andre Alexander says Mayor Petey is against paying for rich people to go to college, but all for rich people funding his campaign. He is an a-hole, just like Joe. Yeah, that is a good point there. He still has the most billionaire donors. I mean, Pete Buttigieg is completely supported by money, by corporate money, wealthy donors. That's all Buttigieg. Banana Fish 58 says your rant about Hillary was exactly how I feel about her. Thanks for all the hard work you do. Like Bernie, you are a public servant. P.S. F her. All right. What's funny, in the past, I'd be like, okay, guys, settle down, but it's gotten to the point now where why is she on Howard Stern's show? Why is she saying anything? Like, why is she involved in this discussion? Like, can you imagine if Bernie Sanders lost that election? Do you think he'd be called upon on all these different shows to talk about how Hillary Clinton screwed him? Like, can you imagine? Can you imagine if Bernie lost in 2016 and he's blaming Hillary Clinton? It's like, oh my God, the media would freak the hell out. But when it comes to Hillary, she can do whatever the hell she wants. Reluctant Dem. Nina Turner versus Mike Pence VP debate. Your thoughts? I would love it. This is why that isn't why I support Nina for VP, but that would be a great benefit of her supporting or for being the VP. Nina Turner against Mike Pence in a VP debate. Forget about it. She would rock that place. Shelby Hall sends a super chat in saying Pelsi was interviewed the other day and said her legacy is the Affordable Care Act. She'll never allow Medicare for all. She's got to go. What's even ridiculous about her saying that is that Medicare for all is it's the next step, the next stage in the Affordable Care Act. It's just an extension. So, like, people are like, oh, tearing down the system. No, there's a transition period. You lower the age under Medicare for all. You lower the age to like 50, 54. So you keep lowering the age until you cover everybody with Medicare. With Medicare. So like the ACA is still existing in that transition period. And when Barack Obama was fighting for the Affordable Care Act, he too said this is just part of a transition into eventual full coverage. So Medicare for all should not be treated as like completely, destroying the Affordable Care Act. No, it's a transition point. The Affordable Care Act is a transition point to Medicare for all. Anybody saying otherwise, like Pelosi saying otherwise, or Buttigieg or Biden saying, oh, how can we tear down this entire system? It's not tearing it down. Barack Obama himself was fighting for universal coverage in his wording, in his rhetoric, when he was fighting for the Affordable Care Act. This was a transition into eventual full coverage. So that entire talking point is just completely incorrect from the Democratic establishment. But obviously it's used to protect their existing system, which favors corporate interests. So it's not, they don't actually care about the ACA. What they care about are the corporate interests. Phil Smart says, David, how do you counter the Canadian wait time argument? I always hear this from right-wingers at the bar, LOL. I'm not from Canada, so I don't exactly know what the wait times are like. I counter it by saying it's complete bullshit. Maybe I just got demonetized because I said bullshit. It's complete bullshit. Complete bullshit. There are wait times in America. I know because I hear about them. So, like, what is this ridiculous argument? So maybe counter it this way, since you can't just say it's bullshit, even though it is. It's kind of hard to just say that without having any experience in it. Healthcare is rationed everywhere. So people that like the people that you talk to in the bar that are saying that, wait times in Canada, those same people will say, well, there's rationing, there's rationing in universal systems because you can't have a doctor for everybody, right? So you got to ration the healthcare. There's rationing of healthcare. There's also rationing in the American system. In the American system, the rationing is based on wealth. If you can afford it, you get the healthcare. So what do you prefer? Do you want a system where it's designed for the wealthy? If you're wealthy, you get healthcare, or a system that is designed based on need? Rationing in Canada or universal systems is based on need. If you need healthcare more than the next person beside you, say, you got in a car accident and you need life-saving surgery right now, you get that immediately. You're not put on a wait list. You get that life-saving surgery when you need it. So you get that over somebody who has an elective surgery that isn't life or death. So, like, for example, I had surgery that was not life or death. So I waited 3 months. I had a 3-month period where, I scheduled surgery 3 months in advance. Again, not life or death. So I was able to wait. Eventually I got the surgery. I was fine. That's how it works. It's based on need. And when it comes to just like typical doctor visits, I said this earlier in the stream, I just call my doctor the same day. I wake up, say I'm not feeling well. I call my doctor's office that day, make an appointment for that day, see my doctor that day, and say she's on vacation or out of town. I can go to any walk-in clinic. Again, it's a single payer system. You can go to any walk-in clinic, see whatever doctor to get to see a doctor, get whatever you need, if you need a prescription, whatever it is. So like it's hard to argue with idiots is kind of what I'm saying here. If you're arguing with people that they're just the people you're talking to, all they're doing is regurgitating what Steven Crowder told them. A guy who lives in America is paid by the wealthiest people in the world to spread propaganda. That's all these people that you're talking to are doing. They don't actually know anything. Ask them, really, where did you hear about these wait times? Did you hear about it from a conservative think tank who wants to privatize healthcare in Canada? Is that where you heard it from? Because that's the only people saying this. So, what is it? The Fraser Institute? I think it's the Fraser Institute. There's a conservative think tank in Canada that tries to BS about wait times here. And also the fact that, Canadians come to America all the time for healthcare. No, we don't. The only time Canadians go to America for healthcare is if you're incredibly wealthy, so you can afford it. Again, healthcare based on wealth. You can afford it, and you want like some, plastic surgery or something. Like you want something that you can skip the line with. So say you have an elective surgery in Canada that you can get in Canada for free, but you can afford to go to America now and get it. Sure, you can do that. But like, what does that tell you? All that tells you is that, once again, the wealthiest are prioritized. So sure, the wealthiest Canadians can skip a line for elective surgery in Canada to go to the US and get that surgery, but they didn't need to. They could have waited because it's an elective surgery. It's not life or death. It's not needed now. So yeah, there's no arguments. Like, it's disgusting, the amount of misinformation that's put out there, all because people in the private health insurance industry want to keep making money. That's all it's about. This is a long stream. Let me finish these super chats and get out of here. Wow, more coming in. William Henderson says, Tulsi, Nina, Warren, and Tlaib as VP. Your thought? Tulsi, no. Nina, yes. Warren, possible, maybe even likely. Tlaib, second choice. So Nina's my first choice. Rashida Tlaib's my second choice. And Elizabeth Warren is fine if that's what it ends up being. But I trust Nina Turner and Rashida Tlaib a little more to actually fight for these issues, as they've been consistent on them. Tulsi Gabbard, I don't trust her at all. Rocket Reindeer says, if Cenk wins, will he have to rerun in November? Yeah, I think he will. So in my interview with him, he talked about how the whole process works. So there's a jungle primary in California. So on March 3rd, there's a vote. If he gets over, I believe, half the vote, then he now has that seat. He has Katie Hill's old seat. If he doesn't get half the vote, then there's a runoff election where the top two go on March 13th, I believe, would be the second voting day. And then whoever wins that wins the seat for the remainder of the term, which goes until November. And then I believe in November he has to win that seat again. So there's a potential here that whoever wins in March won't actually be who has that seat again at the end of the year, but we will see. I'm telling you though, Cenk2020.com, I'm pulling for him. I think he can do it. He has a lot of grassroots support, a lot of volunteers, way more than anybody else in this race. Hopefully it'll be enough to win that district, but we're going to have to wait and see. Phil Smart says, David, do you think the DNC is trying to split the vote as much as possible so it goes to a second ballot and all the superdelegates vote for Biden? So The more I read into this, less I think there's a less and less chance of this happening, because a candidate needs to get 15% of the vote in a state to get delegates. So right now you're just looking at Biden, Warren, and Bernie. Pete Buttigieg, sure, in New Hampshire and Iowa right now is polling higher than that, but anywhere else he's not. So I don't know how much they're really going to split the vote if you have to get 15% to get any delegates. So I think this is a worry that is less of a worry than some people are making it out to be. That said, we would have to hope that Warren's delegates would go to Bernie Sanders. There's no guarantee of that. But this is also why it's actually kind of smart politics to be kind to Warren supporters in the Warren campaign right now in general, because there isn't much crossover, really. I mean, sure, there is a little bit, but you see her now dropping in the polls, and I think largely that's because of it's kind of been exposed now. She is just not as solid on these issues as Bernie Sanders is. So any potential progressive support that she had is now, a lot of it's going to Bernie Sanders, and she also may be losing some liberals to Pete Buttigieg. So Warren is kind of less of a concern at this point. Biden right now, Biden has been first the entire time. I mean, that's where the worry should be. And in order to defeat Joe Biden, you have to get non-voters in your life out to vote. People that are not engaged in politics, people that didn't vote last time. You have to get those people out. Young people especially have to come out to vote. That's what will win the primary for Bernie Sanders. Because if we're going to rely on the older generations, and look, I know there are a lot of older voters that support Bernie Sanders, and you guys are awesome, but you're not the majority, and you know that. So you really have to rely on typical non-voters, independents, and young people. Rob Dom says, what if we change names from Medicare for All to Affordable Care Act 2 or ACA Plus? It wouldn't be accurate, but that's interesting. All right, let me finish the Super Chats off. This has to be the longest stream I've ever done. On YouTube. On Twitch, on Canadian Election Day, there's like a 5-hour stream? I don't know, but you can go watch that. It's pretty long. And actually next week, since you're all here, I may be doing a UK live stream election as well. I should say election live stream as well. So see about that. Wendy Kelly Friedman says, I'm worried about Pete. He's a fake and a Republican, and he could win Iowa. Your thoughts? I don't think he may have some support in polling, but in a caucus, you need to get people out in person, and they need to be there for a bit. That's how a caucus works. So Bernie, there's a report out. I forget if it was a report or a tweet from a reporter, but basically saying that the other campaigns right now are kind of jealous of Bernie Sanders because he has the infrastructure to really get caucus goers out on actual caucus day to come out and support him in Iowa and the other caucuses. They have like this whole infrastructure. He also has, I mean, you look at any data point, Bernie has the strongest support base, meaning people that are not going to waver off of him. So his support base is something like, it's over half of Bernie's support are people that 100% are dedicated to Bernie Sanders. Nobody else has over 50. So when you have a base that dedicated, especially for caucus states, you're in a good position. I'm not too worried about Pete Buttigieg in Iowa. But the media will love him and continue to try to prop him up, but we'll see how long it takes or how far it takes him. All right, you can tell once my speech begins to degrade like Joe Biden that it's time for me to go. So thank you for I don't see any more super chats. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. Is there one new one? No, that's the latest one. Okay. All right. Thanks for joining again every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Let me get the this thing back up. rationalnational.com/join. That's the Patreon page. Support me, support the show. You get access to the Discord. It's like a chat channel. You get access to early access videos. So whenever I get demonetized on something, I put those videos up for patrons first. And there you go. So once again, thanks for coming, and see you next week. And potentially see you, I think on Thursday is the general election for the UK. Potentially see you that night as well. Later.